It begins with a sound, or rather, a collection of sounds, a symphony of modern life that you know intimately. The persistent, digital chime of a notification on your phone, followed by another and another, the low hum of a computer fan, a constant reminder of tasks unfinished. Outside, the sound of traffic, a distant siren, the chorus of a world that never sleeps. And beneath it all, the most relentless sound of them all, the ceaseless chatter of your own mind, a voice that narrates, judges, plans, and worries. It recites to-do lists, replays past conversations, and rehearses future anxieties. This entire orchestra of internal and external noise is the sound of two hands clapping. It is the sound of cause and effect, of action and reaction, of push and pull. It is the sound of our lives as we have come to know them, a constant, often exhausting, dialogue between ourselves and the world. We are told that the solution to this overwhelming noise is to clap louder, to achieve more, to acquire more, to become more. We chase promotions. We seek new experiences. We fill our spaces with objects, hoping that one day the resulting sound will be one of satisfaction, of final, conclusive peace. But it never is. The applause only grows more frantic. The echo in our own minds more deafening. We find ourselves stuck, running on a wheel of effort and exhaustion, forever reaching for something outside of ourselves to quiet the discontent within. But what if the solution isn't to clap louder? What if the solution is to find a different kind of sound altogether? Centuries ago, a Japanese Zen master named Hakuin Akaku presented his students with a question that defied all logic and reason. He looked at them in the stillness of the monastery and asked, "Two hands clap, and there is a sound. What is the sound of one hand?" This is not a riddle to be solved. There is no clever answer, no wordplay to unravel. This is an invitation. It is a doorway, away from the noise of the two hands and into a profound and transformative silence. It is a path that leads not to an answer you can speak, but to a peace you can embody. It is a journey to discover what remains when the striving stops, and you simply listen. So we are left with this question, hanging in the air like a strange, unresolvable chord. What is the sound of one hand? The immediate, natural response of our mind is to treat it as a puzzle, a riddle waiting to be cracked. We are a culture of problem solvers. We are taught from our earliest days that every question has an answer, every problem a solution, and that the tool for finding it is the sharp edge of our intellect. So we apply this tool, the sound of one hand. Perhaps it is the whisper of air as the hand moves through it, a subtle whoosh. Or maybe the answer is philosophical, a metaphor. Perhaps the sound is silence itself, a clever, poetic reversal. Or could it be the sound of the blood rushing through the veins in the hand, the subtle internal hum of a living organism? Our mind generates these possibilities, one after another, presenting them like offerings. It sorts through them, weighing their cleverness, their scientific plausibility, their philosophical depth. But each of these answers, as logical as they may seem, feels hollow, unsatisfying. They feel like tricks, like clever evasions of a question that seems to demand something more, something deeper. And in this feeling of dissatisfaction, we have our first real encounter with the nature of the question itself. For this is not a riddle, it is a koan. A koan is a central practice in the Zen Buddhist tradition, and it is perhaps one of the most misunderstood concepts in the West. The word itself, in Japanese, can be translated as a public case, referring to a question, a story, or a statement from a past Zen master that is presented to a student for contemplation. but its function is not to be understood in the way we understand a piece of information. A koan is not a repository of wisdom to be analyzed and stored away. It is a surgical instrument. Its purpose is to operate on the mind, to cut away the very habit of intellectualizing that we are trying to use to solve it. Our thinking mind, the inner narrator, is a machine built on duality. It functions by splitting reality into pairs of opposites: good and bad, right and wrong, self and other, sound and silence. It cannot function outside of these distinctions. The koan is specifically designed to present the mind with a situation where this fundamental process of division is impossible. A sound, by its very definition in our conceptual world, requires a source and an impact. It requires two things coming together: the sound of two hands clapping, the sound of a bell being struck, the sound of a voice vibrating in the air. The koan of one hand removes one half of the equation, and the entire edifice of logical thought collapses. It asks the mind to perceive a non-dual reality, a reality where the very categories of sound and silence, cause and effect, are no longer valid. In doing so, it reveals the arbitrary nature of these categories and the limitations of the mind that depends on them. The koan is a direct confrontation. Imagine it as a great, smooth, impenetrable wall. It suddenly appears on your path, blocking the way forward. Your training has taught you to be an expert wall climber. You look for handholds, for cracks, for any sign of weakness. You analyze its material. You measure its height. You try to remember everything you've ever learned about walls. This is the intellect at work, applying its knowledge, its strategies, its past experiences. But this wall is different. It offers no purchase. It is perfectly seamless. The more you scramble and analyze, the more frustrated and exhausted you become. You might try to go around it, but the wall extends infinitely in both directions. You might try to dig under it, but it has no foundation. At this point, the Zen instruction is not to try harder, not to find a more clever strategy. The instruction is to simply be with the wall, to press your body against its cool, unyielding surface, to feel its presence with your entire being. The instruction is to put down all your tools, all your theories about walls, and to enter into a direct relationship with the thing itself. You are to pour all of your energy, all of your attention, all of your life force into this one single point of contact. In time, through this sustained, non-analytical attention, a strange thing happens. The distinction between you and the wall begins to blur. The sense of a separate me who is trying to get past a separate wall starts to dissolve. And in that dissolution, the problem of the wall vanishes, not because you have conquered it, but because you have become one with it. This is the function of a koan. It is a wall for the mind. The man most famously associated with this particular wall was the great 18th century Japanese Zen master, Hakuin Ekaku. Hakuin is a giant in the history of Zen. He revitalized the Rinzai school, which emphasizes koan practice, and he systematized the curriculum, placing the sound of one hand at the very beginning of the path. For Hakuin, this was not an intellectual exercise. It was what he called a great doubt, a profound existential query that a student was meant to live with day and night. It was to become more important than food, than sleep, than comfort. When a student came to him, Hakuin would demand to be shown the sound of one hand. He was not asking for a verbal explanation. He was demanding a living demonstration, a change in the student's entire state of being. The student was to take this question into their meditation, into their work in the monastery, into their every breath. When their mind chattered about the past, they were to bring it back to the koan. When they worried about the future, They were to bring it back to the koan. The koan acts like a great heat, burning away all the non-essential thoughts, all the petty anxieties and self-obsessions, until only this one great, unanswerable question remains. The student would return to Hakuin again and again, presenting their answers. They might make a gesture, or remain silent, or offer a poem, and Hakuin, with his penetrating insight, would see if the answer came from the clever intellect or from the depths of a transformed heart. He would approve or disapprove, sending them back to work until the koan had broken them open, revealing a truth beyond words. This process of breaking open requires a specific prerequisite, a willingness to let go of what we think we know. There is a famous Zen story that illustrates this perfectly. A learned scholar, a man of great reputation and full of philosophical knowledge, came to visit a Zen master to inquire about the nature of Zen. The master welcomed him and offered him tea. As was custom, the master began to pour the tea into the scholar's cup. He filled it to the brim, but he did not stop. The hot tea continued to pour, overflowing the cup and spilling onto the saucer, then onto the table. The scholar watched, first with confusion, and then with alarm. Finally, he could not contain himself. "Stop!" he shouted. "The cup is over full. No more will go in." The master paused, looked at the scholar, and said, "Like this cup, you are full of your own opinions and speculations. How can I show you Zen unless you first empty your cup?" This story is a direct teaching for anyone who approaches a koan. Our minds are full of facts, theories, beliefs, and most of all, the conviction that our intellect is the ultimate authority on reality. The koan cannot be squeezed into this already full cup. To even begin to work with it, we must be willing to set our knowledge aside. We must cultivate a state of not knowing, a beginner's mind, open and receptive to a different way of seeing. The sound of one hand is an invitation to empty your cup. It asks us not to add another piece of knowledge, but to remove the assumptions that prevent us from seeing what is already here. So, the koan is not a thing to be solved. It is a pointer, a finger pointing at the moon of reality. Our habit is to analyze the finger, to discuss its shape and its pointing direction. But the koan asks us to look where it is pointing. It is pointing away from the conceptual world of the intellect and toward the world of direct, unmediated experience. It is pointing toward the cage of our own mind, showing us the bars that we ourselves have created. To engage with it is to agree to abandon our most trusted tool, our rational mind, and to step into a space of profound uncertainty. It is a journey that requires not cleverness, but courage. The courage to be empty, the courage to not know. And this, naturally, brings us to the next stage of our investigation. If the tool of logic, the thinking mind, is not the right one for this task, then we must look more closely at this tool itself. What is this constant voice in our heads that insists on answers, that lives in a world of problems and solutions? What is the nature of this tyrannical thinking mind, and why does it hold such sway over our peace? The tool that fails so completely when faced with a koan is the very same tool we use to navigate every moment of our lives. It is the thinking mind. It goes by many names. In spiritual traditions, it is the monkey mind, leaping restlessly from branch to branch, from thought to thought, never still. It is the inner commentator, the roommate in your head, who has an opinion on everything you do, say, and feel. It is a voice so familiar, so constant, that we rarely even notice its presence. It wakes up with you in the morning, sometimes even before you, greeting you not with silence, but with a pre-packaged list of the day's anxieties and obligations. It narrates your breakfast, critiques your reflection in the mirror, and rehearses conversations that may or may not happen. It is the architect of your regrets about the past and the author of your fears about the future. This endless stream of commentary, this internal monologue, is so deeply woven into the fabric of our being that we make a fundamental error, the great and tragic misidentification of a lifetime. We believe that we are this voice. We believe its stories. We obey its commands, and we suffer its judgments as if they were ultimate truth. The primary function of this thinking mind is to act as a filter, a layer of interpretation between you and the raw data of reality. You almost never experience the world as it actually is. You experience the mind's story about the world. Imagine you have been wearing a pair of grey-tinted glasses since the day you were born. You would not know that you were wearing them. You would simply believe that the world is a grey, muted place. The thinking mind is a far more complex and subtle set of glasses. It doesn't just tint the world with a single colour, it projects an entire narrative onto it. A sudden downpour of rain is not simply a neutral weather event. The mind immediately labels it bad weather. It then projects this label into the future. This will ruin the picnic. It then personalizes it. Why does this always happen to me? In the space of a few seconds, a simple, natural phenomenon has been transformed into a source of personal grievance and suffering. We are no longer experiencing the rain. We are experiencing our resistance to it, our judgment of it, our story about it. Likewise, a neutral expression on a colleague's face is not just a collection of facial muscles. The mind interprets it as a sign of disapproval, which then triggers a cascade of insecure thoughts about our work performance, our social standing, and our future at the company. We live in a world of our own creation, a virtual reality woven from the threads of thought. And because this reality is built on a foundation of judgment, comparison, and fear, it is, by its nature, a place of stress. This is the engine of anxiety. Anxiety, in its most common form, cannot survive in the pure present moment. It is a creature of time, a ghost that haunts the imagined future. The thinking mind is the time machine that takes us there. It compulsively projects our consciousness into a future that does not exist, and then populates that future with endless what-if scenarios. What if I fail? What if they reject me? What if I get sick? What if I lose what I have? Each of these questions is just a thought, a fleeting electrical impulse in the brain. It has no more substance than a dream. Yet we grant it the weight of reality. We inhabit these catastrophic stories as if they were already happening. Our bodies, unable to distinguish between a vividly imagined threat and a real one, respond accordingly. The heart rate increases, the muscles tense, the breath becomes shallow, and stress hormones like cortisol and adrenaline flood our system. We are physically living the experience of a disaster that exists only in our heads. The thinking mind is the scriptwriter, the director, and the star of this internal horror film, and we are its captive audience. The tyranny lies in its relentlessness. It doesn't allow for peace. Any moment of stillness is seen as an opportunity to introduce a new worry, to re-examine an old wound, or to plan for a future catastrophe. It is a master of convincing us that our safety and happiness depend on its constant, vigilant activity. It tells us that if we just think a little harder, plan a little better, worry a little more effectively, we can finally control life and protect ourselves from all harm. But this is its greatest deception. The overthinking itself is the harm. The incessant activity is the source of the exhaustion and the fear. The great liberation offered by Buddhist practice begins with a simple, yet profoundly revolutionary insight. You are not your thoughts. You are not the voice in your head. This is a truth that must be experienced rather than just understood intellectually. Imagine yourself sitting by a river. The thoughts, feelings, and sensations that move through you are like the leaves, twigs, and other debris floating on the water's surface. They arise from an unknown source upstream. They float past you for a while, and they disappear downstream. For most of our lives, we are like someone who has jumped into the river and is desperately clinging to every piece of debris that floats by, believing that we are that leaf, that we are that twig. We are tossed and turned by the current, battered and bruised. The practice of mindfulness is the simple act of learning to sit on the riverbank. From this stable vantage point, you can watch the debris float by without being swept away by it. You can observe your thoughts with a calm and curious detachment. A worried thought appears. You see it. You acknowledge it. Ah, there is worry, and you let it float on by without grabbing onto it, without believing its story. You are not the debris in the river. You are the silent, spacious awareness that witnesses the river. You are the sky, and the thoughts are merely the clouds that drift through. Some days the sky is full of dark, stormy clouds. Other days it is clear and blue, but the sky itself is never harmed or changed by the weather that passes through it. Recognizing this creates a space, a gap of freedom between the observer and the observed, and in this space, peace becomes possible. There is a classic Zen story that perfectly captures this human tendency to be ruled by the thinking mind. Two monks, a senior monk and a junior monk, were traveling together on a long pilgrimage. Their vows were strict, and one of them was a prohibition against making physical contact with women. After walking for many miles, they came to a wide river where the current was swift. A beautiful young woman in fine clothes stood at the river's edge, distressed because she could not cross without ruining her silk dress. Without hesitation, the senior monk walked over to her, lifted her into his arms, carried her across the turbulent water, and gently set her down on the opposite bank. He then continued on his way. The junior monk was speechless with shock and outrage. For the next several hours, as they walked in silence, his mind was a storm of judgment. He replayed the scene over and over. How could his master, a man of such discipline, so brazenly break a fundamental vow? His inner commentator worked itself into a frenzy of self-righteous anger. He imagined all the repercussions, the bad karma, the disgrace. The weight of his thoughts became heavier with every step. Finally, unable to bear the burden of his internal monologue any longer, he burst out, confronting his master. "How could you do that?" he demanded. "You know we are forbidden to even touch a woman, and you carried her in your arms across the river." The senior monk stopped, looked at his young companion with deep compassion, and replied softly, "I left that woman on the riverbank hours ago. Are you still carrying her?" This story is not about two monks from a distant time. It is about us. Every day, we carry people, events, insults, and worries with us, long after they have passed. We carry the argument from yesterday, the critical comment from last week, the fear about next month. It is the thinking mind that does the carrying. It clings to these moments, replaying them endlessly, because it uses them to build its identity, to reinforce its sense of grievance or its sense of fear. It is the mechanism of our bondage. But the story also shows us the possibility of freedom. The old monk was present with the situation. He saw a need, and he responded with simple, unhesitating compassion. And once the action was complete, It was over. He did not create a story around it. He did not carry it with him. He remained in the clear, uncluttered space of the present moment. His mind was like still water, while the young monk's mind was a turbulent storm. This turbulent, thinking mind does not operate in a vacuum. Its constant activity, its judgments, its fears, and its stories are all in service of one central project, the construction and ceaseless defense of a sense of self, a personality, an ego. This leads us to our next crucial inquiry. If this chattering mind is not who we truly are, then what is this precious I that it works so tirelessly to protect and define? What is this self that feels so solid, so real, so central to our existence? The voice in the head, the restless monkey mind, is not speaking into a void. It is speaking to and about a central character. It is the narrator in the epic story of me. This character is the protagonist of every memory, the hero of every future fantasy, the victim of every past injustice. This perceived center of our universe, this bundle of memories, beliefs, and identities, is what we can call the ego. The question, who am I, is perhaps the most fundamental query of human existence. And for most of us, the answer is a collection of labels. I am my name. I am my profession. I am a parent, a child, a friend. I am my personality: anxious, confident, artistic, disciplined. I am my history, the sum total of my triumphs and my traumas. This collage of thoughts, roles, and sensations feels solid, stable, and intensely personal. The ego is this story we tell ourselves about who we are, a story we edit and revise constantly to maintain a sense of continuity and coherence. And from a conventional perspective, this ego is not an enemy. It is a necessary psychological construct, a survival mechanism that helps us organize the chaos of experience and navigate the complexities of social life. It gives us a name to answer to and a role to play. But the spiritual path invites us to look deeper, to investigate the nature of this storyteller and the reality of its central character. This story of me is not an objective biography. It is a highly curated and often fictional narrative. The mind, acting as the ego's loyal publicist, carefully selects memories that reinforce our preferred self-image. It remembers the times we were strong and conveniently forgets the times we were weak. It replays our witty comebacks and edits out our foolish mistakes. It clings to past grievances because a sense of victimhood can be a powerful, if painful, form of identity. It defines itself by its possessions, its accomplishments, its relationships. The car I drive becomes an extension of my identity. The success of my children becomes a reflection of my worth. The approval of my boss becomes a confirmation of my value. This I is a patchwork quilt, stitched together from fleeting thoughts, borrowed opinions, and social conditioning. It provides a sense of a fixed point in a constantly changing world, a solid ground upon which to stand. The problem, from a spiritual perspective, is that this ground is an illusion. We spend our entire lives polishing, defending, and promoting this story of me. And in doing so, we cause ourselves immense suffering, because life, in its unpredictable and uncontrollable flow, constantly challenges our carefully constructed narrative. The radical insight at the heart of Buddhist psychology is the doctrine of anatta, or no self. This is perhaps the most challenging and counterintuitive of its teachings. It is often misunderstood in the West as a nihilistic statement that we do not exist. This is not the case. Anatta does not mean non-existence. It means no separate, solid, permanent, independent self. It suggests that if we conduct a thorough investigation, we will not be able to find a core, unchanging I anywhere. The self we take to be so solid is not a thing, but a process. It is not a noun, but a verb. To make this clear, Buddhist teachings deconstruct the human being into 5 components, known as the 5 aggregates, or skandhas. These are form, our physical body, feelings, pleasant, unpleasant, and neutral. Perceptions, the processing of sensory information. Mental formations, our thoughts, intentions, biases, and habits. And consciousness, the raw awareness of the other 4. We are invited to look for the self in each of these categories. Is my body me? My body is constantly changing. Cells are dying and being replaced. It ages, it gets sick. It is composed of non-body elements, like the food I've eaten and the air I've breathed. So the body cannot be a permanent, independent self. Are my feelings me? Feelings are even more fleeting. They arise and pass away in moments. Joy, sadness, anger, they are visitors, not the owner of the house. Are my perceptions me? My perceptions are dependent on my sense organs and external objects. They are not me. What about my thoughts, my mental formations? This feels closer. Surely, I am my mind. But as we have seen, thoughts are like clouds passing through the sky, an endless, impersonal stream. To identify with one thought is as absurd as identifying with one cloud. Finally, is consciousness me? Consciousness itself is dependent on an object. There is consciousness of seeing, consciousness of hearing, consciousness of thinking. It is not a monolithic I that exists on its own. The investigation leads to a startling conclusion. We are a flowing river of these 5 processes, all interdependent, all in constant flux. There is no separate I standing outside of this flow, directing it, or owning it. The ego is like a rainbow. It appears vivid, beautiful, and real from a distance. But if you try to walk to it, to touch it, to grasp it, you will find nothing there but sunlight and mist, a temporary conjunction of conditions. This very inquiry was recorded in a famous ancient text, the Questions of King Milinda. Milinda was a Bactrian Greek king who ruled in the 2nd century BCE and was known for his love of philosophical debate. He sought out a renowned Buddhist sage named Nagasena to challenge him on the doctrine of no-self. After the initial greetings, the king asked for the sage's name. Nagasena replied that he was known as Nagasena, but this was merely a convenient name, a designation, and that no permanent, individual Nagasena could be found. The king, a sharp logician, was unconvinced. He declared that if there is no Nagasena, then who is it that wears the robes, takes the food, and teaches the Dharma? He then pointed to his magnificent royal chariot and used it as an analogy for the self. Nagasena, a master of skillful means, calmly turned the king's own analogy against him. He asked, "Your Majesty, did you come here on foot or in a chariot?" "In a chariot, venerable sir," the king replied. "Then, show me the chariot," Nagasena said. "Is the pole the chariot?" "No, venerable sir," said the king. "Is the axle the chariot? Are the wheels, the frame, the ropes, or the yoke the chariot?" The king had to answer no to each question. Then, Nagasena continued, "Are all of these parts taken together the chariot?" "No, venerable sir." "Then is the chariot something else? Something outside of these parts?" "No, venerable sir," the king admitted. Nagasena then delivered his conclusion. "Your Majesty, you yourself have said that you came in a chariot, but when I ask you to show me the chariot, you cannot find one. Chariot is just a sound, a name, a conventional term used when all these parts are assembled in a specific way. In the same way, Nagasena is a conventional term for the collection of the 5 aggregates. In the ultimate sense, there is no person to be found. The king was humbled and awakened by this clear and powerful demonstration. This deconstruction of the self is not just an intellectual exercise. It is a direct path to the alleviation of suffering. And the koan, what is the sound of one hand, serves this exact purpose. It is a direct assault on the citadel of the ego. The ego thrives on knowing. It loves to have answers, to be the one in control, the one who solves the problem. It approaches the koan as a new challenge to conquer, a new feather to add to its cap. But the koan refuses to cooperate. It turns the spotlight of inquiry back onto the questioner. It implicitly asks, who is this I that is so desperate for an answer? Who is this I that is listening for a sound? As the student grapples with the question, the solid sense of self begins to feel less solid. The one who is searching becomes the object of the search. The koan reveals that the very entity trying to find a solution is the heart of the problem. It is the imagined separateness of the I that creates the duality of a listener and a sound to be heard. When this I is seen through, the duality collapses. We spend our lives in a state of exhausting servitude to this phantom king, this ego. We defend its borders with anger. We try to expand its territory with ambition, and we live in constant fear of its demise. When someone criticizes us, the story of me is threatened, and we feel a deep, personal pain. When we fail at a task, the identity of me as a competent person is shaken, and we feel shame. When we lose a job or a relationship that defines us, we feel as though a part of our very being has been amputated. We suffer because we are defending a ghost. We are clinging tightly to a story, mistaking it for our true self. This profound misidentification, this bondage to a chattering mind and a fictional ego, creates a pervasive sense of underlying unease, a friction against the flow of life. It is a fundamental dissatisfaction that no amount of success, wealth, or pleasure can permanently erase. This universal human experience was the starting point for the Buddha's entire teaching. He gave it a name. He diagnosed it not as a personal failure, but as an inherent condition of unenlightened existence. This is the first noble truth, the truth of Dukkha. After deconstructing the thinking mind and the illusory nature of the self, we arrive at a critical juncture. We can see that our inner world is characterized by a restless internal chatter and a desperate clinging to a story of me that is fundamentally unstable. This combination creates a pervasive, underlying friction in our lives, a sense of things being not quite right. This experience is universal. It is the common ground of all human beings, and it was the precise starting point of the Buddha's teachings. He is often compared to a great physician. A physician's first task is not to offer false comfort or premature cures, but to make an honest and accurate diagnosis of the ailment. The Buddha's first teaching, delivered after his enlightenment, did exactly this. It is known as the Four Noble Truths, and the first truth is the diagnosis of the human condition. The name of this condition is Dukkha. This ancient Pali word, Dukkha, is often translated into English as suffering. But this single word is too narrow, too bleak. It can give the impression that Buddhism is a pessimistic or morbid philosophy, focused only on the pain of life. To truly understand the first noble truth, we must expand our definition of Dukkha. It means not just overt suffering, but also unsatisfactoriness, stress, unease, anxiety, and friction. It is the difference between the way things are and the way we want them to be. It is the inherent instability of a world where everything is in flux. It is the baseline hum of discontent that runs beneath the surface of even our most pleasant moments. The acknowledgement of dukkha is not a negative proclamation. It is a courageous and realistic assessment, the necessary first step towards true and lasting freedom. A doctor who says, "You are ill," is not being pessimistic. They are opening the door to healing. By looking directly at the nature of dukkha, we begin to remove the shame and confusion that so often accompanies our discontent. We realize we are not alone in our struggles. To make the diagnosis clearer, dukkha can be understood on three distinct levels. The first is the most obvious, the suffering of suffering, or dukkha. This is the pain that everyone recognizes and seeks to avoid. It is the physical pain of a migraine headache, of a chronic illness, of an aging body with its aches and limitations. It is the acute emotional pain of grief when a loved one dies, the sting of betrayal, the humiliation of being fired from a job, the despair of a failed relationship. It is the anxiety of not having enough to pay the bills, the sorrow of seeing our children struggle, the fear that comes with a frightening medical diagnosis. This level of dukkha is the raw, undeniable hardship of embodied existence. It is sickness, old age, and death. It is being separated from what we love and being forced into contact with what we dislike. No amount of positive thinking can wish this reality away. It is a fundamental feature of life, and the first noble truth asks us to acknowledge it without flinching, to admit its presence in our own lives and the lives of everyone around us. The second level of dukkha is more subtle and in many ways more pervasive. It is the suffering of change, or viparinama dukkha. This is the stress and anxiety that is woven into the fabric of our pleasant experiences. The problem here is not the pleasure itself, but its inherent impermanence. Life grants us moments of profound joy, happiness, and success. We fall in love, we get the promotion we worked for, we go on a perfect vacation, we watch a breathtaking sunset. These are wonderful moments. But because we have identified ourselves with a solid, permanent ego that seeks permanent security and happiness, we try to grasp onto these moments. We try to freeze them in time, and in that very act of clinging, dukkha arises. Even as we experience the joy, a subtle background anxiety begins to whisper in our ear, "This won't last." The joy of a new relationship is tinged with the fear of its ending. The pride of a great achievement is shadowed by the pressure to repeat it. The blissful relaxation of a holiday is spoiled by the encroaching thought of returning to the demands of work. We are like children at the beach, frantically trying to build a sandcastle, all the while knowing the tide is coming in. The happiness we find in the world is, by its very nature, conditional and unreliable. It depends on external circumstances remaining just so, but the one law of the universe is that circumstances are always changing. This dukkha is the stress of holding on, the friction of resisting the natural flow of life. It's the profound unsatisfactoriness of seeking lasting fulfillment in things that are destined to fade. The third and most profound level is the suffering of conditioned existence, or sankhara dukkha. This is the deep, existential unease that is part of being a conditioned being. As we saw in our investigation of the self, we are not a solid entity, but a temporary assembly of physical and mental processes, the five aggregates. Our existence is dependent on a web of countless causes and conditions, none of which are ultimately under our control. Sankhara dukkha is the background anxiety that stems from this fundamental precariousness. It is a subtle but constant sense of insecurity. It can surface as a low-grade restlessness, a feeling of vague dissatisfaction, even when, on the surface, everything in our life is going well. It's the feeling that something is missing, the quiet desperation that can haunt us in moments of solitude. It is the friction of our composite nature, the inherent stress of a system that is constantly struggling to maintain a fragile equilibrium. Our very attempt to grapple with the koan of one hand is a direct encounter with this form of dukkha. The mind, a conditioned process, tries to find a solid, ultimate answer, a final ground of certainty, but the koan offers no such ground. The frustration, the agitation, the feeling of being stuck that arises when facing the koanthis is sankhara dukkha made manifest. It is the dis-ease of the conditioned mind coming face to face with its own limits. The universality of this truth is beautifully illustrated in the story of Kisa Gotami. She was a young woman in the time of the Buddha whose only son had died. Overwhelmed by a grief so powerful it bordered on madness, she refused to accept his death. She clutched the small, cold body to her chest and wandered through her village, begging everyone she met for a medicine that could restore her child to life. Some mocked her, others pitied her, but no one could help. Finally, a wise man saw her desperation and guided her to the Buddha. She fell at the Buddha's feet, presented the body of her son, and pleaded, "Lord, can you give me a medicine that will cure my boy?" The Buddha looked at her with immense compassion and said, "I can, but first, you must do one thing for me. You must go back into the village and bring me a single mustard seed from a house where no Wannano parent, no spouse, no child, no servant thus, ever died." A surge of hope filled Kisa Gotami's heart. This seemed like a simple task. She began her search immediately, going from door to door. At the first house, a kind woman said, "Of course, I will give you a mustard seed." But when Kisa Gotami asked if death had ever visited the home, the woman's face fell. "Alas," she said, "my husband died only last year." She went to the next house, and the next, and the next. The story was always the same. Everyone was willing to give her a seed, but every family had been touched by loss. One person had lost a mother, another a sister, another a child. They told her, "The living are few, but the dead are many." As the day wore on, and she walked from house to house, the profound truth of their words began to penetrate her grief-stricken mind. Her personal, isolating sorrow began to dissolve into a much larger, shared reality. She realized that death was not a unique tragedy that had struck only her. It was the inescapable law of life. Her suffering was the suffering of all beings. With this profound insight, she was no longer Kisa Gotami, the bereaved mother. She was a woman awakened to the truth of dukkha. To name dukkha, then, is not to surrender to despair. It is an act of clarity, courage, and immense compassion for ourselves and for others. It is the moment we stop blaming ourselves or the world for our fundamental dissatisfaction and instead recognize it as a shared and treatable condition. It is the ground upon which the entire path to liberation is built. Once the physician has made a clear diagnosis, the next logical and hopeful step is to identify the cause of the illness. For if a cause can be found, a cure becomes possible. This is the great promise held out by the Buddha. Our dukkha is not random or meaningless. It has a specific, identifiable origin, and this leads us directly to the second noble truth, the investigation into the cause of our universal unease. The diagnosis has been made. We have looked directly at the universal condition of dukkha, the pervasive stress and unsatisfactoriness that colors our lives. A courageous diagnosis, however, is only the beginning. A truly great physician does not stop at naming the illness. They seek its root cause. If dukkha is the symptom, what is the pathogen? The Buddha's profound insight, the second noble truth, is that our suffering is not random, nor is it imposed upon us by an external force. It arises from a specific, identifiable cause within our own minds. This cause is called tanha. The Pali word tanha is often translated as desire, but like dukkha, this single word fails to capture its full meaning. A more accurate translation is thirst or craving. This implies something far more powerful and compulsive than a simple wish or preference. It is a burning, deep-seated thirst for things to be other than they are. It is the engine of our restlessness. The Buddha once used a powerful analogy. He said that in life, we are often shot by two arrows. The first arrow is the unavoidable, objective pain of existence's sickness, loss, failure, the dukkha of the first noble truth. This first arrow is painful, but it is not by itself the source of our deepest torment. The real suffering comes from the second arrow, the arrow that we shoot into ourselves in reaction to the first. This second arrow is our mental anguish, our resistance, our storytelling, and the bow that fires this second arrow is tanha. It is our craving and aversion that transforms pain into suffering. To understand how this thirst operates, we can see it manifesting in three distinct forms. The first and most familiar is the craving for sense pleasures, kama tanha. This is the thirst for agreeable sights, sounds, smells, tastes, and physical sensations. It is the desire for delicious food, captivating music, beautiful art, sexual intimacy, and luxurious comfort. In itself, enjoying the pleasures of the senses is a natural part of being human. The problem arises when this desire becomes a compulsive thirst, when we begin to believe that our happiness is dependent on satisfying it. We chase after the next gourmet meal, the next hit song, the next thrilling experience, believing that this time it will finally provide lasting satisfaction. But sense pleasures are, by their nature, fleeting. The delicious taste of the food vanishes the moment we swallow. The excitement of the new purchase fades into familiarity. The more we chase these pleasures, the more the thirst grows, and we find ourselves on a treadmill of pursuit and disappointment, forever seeking a permanent satisfaction from impermanent sources. The second form of thirst is deeper and more subtle. It is the craving for existence or becoming, bhava, tanha. This is not just a thirst for things, it is the thirst to be. It is the deep, desperate drive of the ego to solidify its own existence, to become more real, more important, more permanent. This is the fuel of ambition, the craving for fame, status, power, and wealth. Not just for the sensory pleasure they bring, but for what they say about me. It is the thirst to be seen, to be remembered, to leave a mark on the world. It is the force that drives us to tirelessly build and defend our personal narrative, our identity. This very craving is at the heart of our struggle with the koan of one hand. The mind's frantic effort to find the right answer, to grasp the concept and possess the knowledge, is a perfect manifestation of bhavatana. It is the craving to become someone who knows, someone who has solved the puzzle, someone whose ego is validated by this spiritual accomplishment. We are not just seeking an answer, we are seeking to be the one who has the answer. The third form of thirst is the shadow of the second. It is the craving for non-existence or annihilation, vibhava tanha. If craving for existence is the desperate I want to be, this is the equally desperate I want to not be. It is the powerful urge to get rid of something unpleasant, to escape from a painful reality. This manifests as aversion, anger, hatred, and ill will. When we are faced with a person, a situation, or a feeling that we find painful, this thirst drives us to push it away, to destroy it, to annihilate it from our experience. It is the energy behind road rage, behind bitter resentment, behind the desire to silence a critic. In its most extreme form, vibhavatana can become the desire for self-annihilation, the suicidal urge, which is born from the mistaken belief that by destroying the self, one can destroy suffering. It is the ultimate act of pushing away, a final, tragic attempt to escape from the dukkha that seems unbearable. These two fundamental urges, grasping at what we like and pushing away what we dislike, are the two hands of the ego. This is the sound of two hands clapping. Life presents a neutral event, a neutral sensation. The mind, conditioned by tanha, immediately reacts. It labels the experience good or bad, pleasant or unpleasant. If it is labeled pleasant, the hand of craving reaches out to grasp it, to hold on to it, to make it last. If it is labeled unpleasant, the hand of aversion immediately acts to push it away, to resist it, to destroy it. Our entire life is a series of these convulsive movements, a frantic dance of grasping and pushing. We are in a constant state of war with reality, trying to control the uncontrollable, trying to make the world conform to our desires. This ceaseless activity, this internal friction, is exhausting. This is the very heart of dukkha. The peace of one hand, the peace of nirvana, is found not in becoming more successful at grasping or pushing, but in learning to allow the hands to rest, to remain open and still, allowing experience to arise and pass without being manipulated. Nowhere is the mechanism of tanha more powerfully amplified than in our modern consumer culture. The entire industry of advertising functions as a global temple dedicated to the worship of craving. Its purpose is to create and sustain a sense of lack. It bombards us with images of perfect bodies, luxurious lifestyles, and blissful experiences, all designed to make us feel that our own lives are inadequate. It whispers to us that happiness, wholeness, and social acceptance are just one purchase away. Social media then magnifies this effect exponentially as we are exposed to a constant stream of curated, idealized versions of other people's lives, fueling our craving for existence, bhavatana, and creating a pervasive fear of missing out. We are immersed in a system that is expertly designed to keep us thirsty, to ensure that the moment one desire is satisfied, another 10 arise to take its place. We are conditioned to be perpetual consumers, not just of products, but of experiences, forever seeking the next hit of pleasure, the next validation of our ego. There is a powerful Buddhist parable that captures our predicament. A starving dog finds a dry, weathered bone, completely stripped of any meat or marrow. Driven by its intense hunger, its powerful tanha, the dog begins to gnaw on the bone relentlessly. It gets no nourishment from it. In fact, it starts to harm itself. It scrapes its gums, and its mouth begins to bleed. Tasting its own blood, the dog is fooled into thinking it is drawing sustenance from the bone, and this delusion causes it to chew even more frantically, injuring itself more and more in the process. This is a tragic and precise image of our relationship with our cravings. We chase after objects and experiences that offer no real, lasting nourishment for the heart. The fleeting pleasure we receive, like the taste of the dog's own blood, only deepens the delusion that we are on the right track, causing us to pursue our desires with even greater, more self-destructive force. The identification of tanha as the cause of dukkha is the most hopeful news imaginable. It tells us that our suffering is not our fault, but it is our responsibility. It is not inflicted upon us by the outside world, by other people, or by a capricious God. It is generated from within, by a specific, identifiable mental habit. And if it is a habit, it can be changed. If our illness has a cause, and that cause is internal, then the illness is not terminal. It can be cured. This means we are not helpless victims of circumstance. We hold the key to our own liberation. It is possible to imagine a state where the burning thirst is quenched, where the compulsive grasping and pushing ceases, where the second arrow is never fired. This is not a fanciful dream. It is a potentiality within every human mind. The Buddha gave it a name. This state of cessation, this freedom from craving, is the promise of the third noble truth. Having diagnosed the universal condition of dukkha, and having identified its specific cause as the burning thirst of tanha, we arrive at the most crucial and hopeful turning point in the Buddha's teaching. The great physician, after delivering the diagnosis and explaining the origin of the illness, now offers the prognosis. And the prognosis is one of radical, unconditional hope. The illness is not terminal. A state of perfect health is not only possible, it is the mind's natural birthright. This is the third noble truth, the truth of nirodha, a word that means cessation or ending. It is the unambiguous promise that there can be a complete and final end to suffering. The name given to this state of ultimate health, this supreme peace, is nirvana. For the Western mind, the word nirvana is laden with misconceptions. We tend to imagine it as a kind of heavenly paradise, a celestial realm of clouds and blissful spirits, where one goes after death as a reward for a virtuous life. Or, conversely, we might fear it as a state of utter annihilation, a bleak nothingness, where the personality is extinguished and one becomes a mindless, passionless void. Both of these interpretations miss the profound and practical reality of what nirvana represents. It is not a place you go to. It is a state you realize, right here and now, in this very life. It is not about self-annihilation, but about the annihilation of the causes of suffering. It is not a state of nothingness, but a state of unshakable fullness and freedom. It is not something you acquire or achieve through heroic effort. It is what is revealed when the obscurations of craving and aversion are allowed to dissolve. To understand its true meaning, we must look at the word itself. The Pali term, nibbana, is derived from a root that means to extinguish or to blow out, as one would blow out the flame of a candle. The Buddha frequently used the powerful metaphor of a fire to describe our unenlightened state. He said that the mind, driven by tanha, is on fire. It is ablaze with the fire of greed, the fire of hatred, and the fire of delusion. This fire is the felt experience of dukkha, is the heat of agitation, the searing pain of frustration, the restless, consuming nature of our discontent. A fire cannot burn without fuel, and the fuel for this fire, as we saw in the second noble truth, is tanha. Every time we grasp at a pleasant experience, we are throwing another log of greed onto the fire. Every time we push away an unpleasant one, we are adding the fuel of aversion. Every time we indulge in the delusion of a solid, separate self, we are fanning the flames. Our lives are spent in a frantic effort to keep this bonfire blazing, mistakenly believing that its heat is the warmth of life itself, when in reality, it is the heat of our own torment. Nirvana, then, is simply what happens when we stop feeding the fire. It is the cessation of suffering that occurs naturally when its causes are removed. We do not have to do anything to the fire to put it out. We do not have to throw water on it or smother it. We simply have to stop supplying the fuel. When the logs of craving, aversion, and delusion are no longer added, the fire naturally subsides. The embers glow for a while, and then they too grow cold. The state that remains is not a dark, empty void, but one of coolness. This is a key attribute of nirvana. It is the supreme coolness that follows a raging fever. It is the profound peace, calm, and relief that is experienced when the burning torment of the passions has ceased. The mind, no longer consumed by its own self-generated heat, returns to its intrinsic nature, luminous, clear, and serene. It is not the end of life, but the end of the fever of living. Because nirvana is an unconditioned reality, meaning it does not arise from causes and is not subject to change, unlike everything else in our conditioned world, it is notoriously difficult to describe with our limited, conditioned language. Words can only point. They can never contain the experience itself. Nevertheless, the ancient texts use a collection of powerful and evocative terms to hint at its qualities. It is called the ultimate freedom because it is freedom from the tyranny of the reactive mind. It is the unshakable because it is a peace that does not depend on fleeting external conditions. It is the deathless, not because the body does not die, but because one is no longer identified with that which is subject to birth and death. It is the island amidst the flood, a place of perfect safety and refuge from the turbulent waters of samsara, the cycle of birth and death. It is described as supreme bliss, not the fleeting, excitable happiness of sensory pleasure, but a deep, abiding well-being that permeates one's entire being. A person who has realized this state, an arhat, or an awakened one, still experiences the world. They feel the warmth of the sun and the chill of the wind. They encounter pleasant and unpleasant people. The first arrow of life still arrives, but the second arrow is never fired. There is no inner reaction, no mental proliferation, no grasping, no aversion. There is only a spacious, compassionate, and wise response to life as it unfolds. This state of profound inner peace and non-conflict is the very essence of the sound of one hand. The clamorous noise of the two hands clapping is the sound of dukkha. It is the sound of the ego, driven by tanha, in constant conflict with reality. It is the sound of me wanting something from the world, the sound of grasping and pushing, of hope and fear. It is the sound of the fire. The sound of one hand is the silence of nirvana. It is not an empty silence, but a living, vibrant stillness. It is the sound of a mind that has come to rest, a mind that is whole, complete, and at peace with itself and with the totality of existence. There is no longer a separate clapper and something to be clapped against. The duality has collapsed. The inner war is over. To hear the sound of one hand is to realize this state of unshakable peace, to awaken to the freedom that was always present, hidden beneath the smoke and flames of our own craving. This promise, this third noble truth, is the pivot upon which the entire spiritual path turns. It transforms the practice from a grim struggle against our own suffering into a hopeful journey towards a tangible and attainable freedom. It assures us that nirvana is not a myth or a distant dream reserved for a chosen few in ancient times. It is the inherent potential of every human mind. We can even experience faint echoes of it in our ordinary lives. In any moment that we are able to completely let go, to rest in simple, non-judgmental awareness, without wanting anything to be different, we taste a tiny drop of the coolness of nirvana. In a moment of selfless generosity, in the deep absorption of watching a sunset, in the simple act of forgiving someone, the fires of the ego die down for a moment, and a natural peace shines through. These moments show us that the path is real, and the goal is attainable. The physician has now given us the complete prognosis. The illness is curable. This profound and liberating promise naturally leads to the final, all-important question. What is the prescription? What is the practical, step-by-step treatment plan that we can follow to systematically withdraw the fuel from the fire, to walk the path from the burning shore of Dukkha to the cool island of Nirvana? This is the subject of the fourth and final noble truth, the Noble Eightfold Path. The journey we have undertaken so far has brought us to a place of profound clarity and hope. We have faced the honest diagnosis of Dukkha, the universal unsatisfactoriness of our existence. We have identified its root cause in the burning thirst of tanha, the compulsive craving and aversion that drives our minds. And we have been given the ultimate prognosis. This condition is curable, and the state of perfect, unshakable peace, known as nirvana, is attainable. The great physician has laid out the nature of the illness and the promise of a cure. Now, we arrive at the fourth and final noble truth, the most practical and empowering part of the entire teaching. This is the prescription. It is the detailed, step-by-step treatment plan that will guide us from the shores of suffering to the refuge of liberation. This is the Noble Eightfold Path. It is essential to understand that this path is not a set of doctrines to be believed, nor is it a rigid sequence of commandments to be blindly obeyed. It is a pragmatic and holistic program for living, a guide to cultivating the skills and qualities of mind and heart that lead directly to the end of suffering. The Buddha did not present himself as a savior to be worshipped, but as an expert guide who had walked the path himself and was now simply showing others the way. The word path itself is significant. It implies a journey, a process of gradual development. It is something to be walked, to be experienced, not just to be thought about. It is the how-to manual for transforming the abstract philosophy of the first three truths into a living reality. It is the way we learn to stop feeding the fire of dukkha. To make this comprehensive path more accessible, it is traditionally divided into three interconnected pillars of training. These are sila, or ethical conduct, samadhi, or mental discipline, and panya, or wisdom. These three pillars form a synergistic system, each one supporting and deepening the others. The foundation is sila, or ethical conduct. This involves the cultivation of outer harmony in our interactions with the world. It is about learning to speak and act in ways that are wholesome and harmless to ourselves and to others. A life of ethical integrity creates a mind that is free from the inner turmoil of remorse, guilt, and fear. This inner calm is the essential ground upon which deeper meditative practice can be built. Upon this foundation, we cultivate samadhi, or mental discipline. This is the training of inner harmony. It is the heart of meditative practice, where we learn to tame the monkey mind, developing a mind that is calm, focused, stable, and powerful. Through this training, we learn to observe our inner world without being swept away by it. A mind that has been disciplined through samadhi becomes like a powerful, finely tuned instrument, capable of extraordinary clarity. This clarity then allows for the arising of panya, or wisdom. This is the pinnacle of the path. It is not mere intellectual knowledge, but a direct, penetrating insight into the true nature of reality. It is seeing for ourselves the truth of impermanence, suffering, and no self. This wisdom is what ultimately cuts through the root of ignorance and liberates the mind. These three trainings create a powerful upward spiral. A virtuous life supports a calm mind. A calm mind allows for the arising of deep wisdom, and deep wisdom naturally informs our actions, making our ethical conduct effortless and spontaneous. Within these three pillars are the 8 specific factors of the path. They are called right, not in a moralistic sense of right versus wrong, but in the sense of being skillful, effective, and conducive to the goal of ending suffering. The path begins with the pillar of wisdom. The first factor is right view or right understanding. This is the foundation for the entire journey. It means seeing the world through a clear lens, understanding the 4 noble truths, not as dogma, but as a practical framework for our experience. The second is right intention or right thought. This means aligning the motivations of our heart with our wisdom. It is the conscious cultivation of intentions of letting go, of goodwill towards all beings, and of harmlessness. From this ground of wisdom, we move to the pillar of ethical conduct. The third factor is right speech. This is about more than just avoiding lies. It is about using our words skillfully, refraining from harsh speech, divisive speech, and idle chatter, and instead cultivating speech that is truthful, kind, helpful, and harmonious. The fourth factor is right action. This involves aligning our physical actions with our intention of harmlessness. The basic precepts are to refrain from killing, stealing, and sexual misconduct actions, which cause evident harm to others and create agitation in our own minds. The fifth factor is right livelihood. This encourages us to earn our living in a way that is honorable and does not cause harm to other beings. It means avoiding professions based on deception, exploitation, or dealing in weapons, intoxicants, or the trading of life. Finally, we come to the pillar of mental discipline, the heart of the meditative training. The sixth factor is right effort. This is not a tense, forceful striving, but a balanced and intelligent application of energy. It is the gentle persistence required to abandon skillful mental states like anger and greed, and to cultivate and maintain skillful states like kindness and concentration. The seventh factor, often considered the heart of the entire path, is right mindfulness. This is the capacity to pay attention to the present moment, intentionally and without judgment. It is the practice of observing our body, our feelings, our thoughts, and the world around us with a clear, non-reactive awareness. The eighth and final factor is right concentration. As mindfulness becomes more stable, it naturally leads to right concentration, the ability to unify the mind on a single object. This deep concentration, or samadhi, makes the mind exceptionally calm and clear, creating the perfect conditions for transformative wisdom to arise. It is crucial to understand that these 8 factors are not sequential steps on a ladder. One does not master right view and then move on to right intention. They are more like the individual strands that are woven together to form a single, strong cable. Each strand supports and strengthens all the others, As our mindfulness improves, our speech becomes more careful. As our conduct becomes more ethical, our mind becomes calmer and easier to concentrate. As our concentration deepens, our view of reality becomes clearer. They are to be cultivated simultaneously, each one contributing to an integrated and balanced way of being. The Buddha once offered a beautiful metaphor for the path. He described a man who arrived at the bank of a vast and dangerous river. There was no bridge and no ferry. To get to the safety of the other shore, the man gathered reeds, branches, and vines, and with skill and effort, he bound them together to build a raft. Holding onto the raft, he paddled across the turbulent water and arrived safely on the other side. The Buddha then asked, "What would a wise person do now?" Would he, thinking, "This raft has been so very useful to me," lift it onto his shoulders and carry it with him on his journey? The obvious answer is no. A wise person would moor the raft at the shore, express gratitude for its service, and continue on his journey unburdened. The Noble Eightfold Path is this raft. It is an eminently practical tool, a vehicle skillfully designed to carry us across the dangerous river of suffering. It is absolutely essential for the crossing, but it is not the destination itself. The goal is the other shore, the shore of nirvana. The path is the means, not the end. This path is the ultimate expression of empowerment. It does not ask for blind faith or dependence on an outside power. It places the tools for liberation directly into our own hands and invites us to use them, to test them, to see the results for ourselves. It is the comprehensive guide for transforming the chaotic and conflicted life of two hands, clapping into the serene and integrated life of one hand. A journey of this magnitude must begin with a clear sense of direction. We must first understand the map and the territory. Therefore, the entire structure of the path is built upon its very first factor, the foundation of wisdom, from which all else flows. We must now explore what it truly means to cultivate a right view, to learn to see the world, and, more importantly, ourselves, not as we wish them to be, but as they truly are. The journey of the Noble Eightfold Path begins not with an action, nor with a meditation practice, but with a view. Before setting out on any great journey, a wise traveler first consults a map. They study the terrain, understand the destination, and orient themselves in the right direction. To set out without a map is to invite confusion, to risk wasted effort, and to wander aimlessly. In the context of the spiritual path, right view, or samadhithi in Pali, is this essential map. It is the cognitive framework, the clear understanding of reality that illuminates the entire landscape of our inner world and gives purpose and direction to every other step we take. Without a foundation of right view, our practice of mindfulness can become aimless. Our ethical conduct can become rigid and rule-based, and our efforts can be easily misdirected. It is the wisdom that answers the fundamental questions of what we are doing and why we are doing it. It is crucial to understand that the term view in this context does not mean adopting a belief system, a dogma, or a creed that one must accept on blind faith. The Buddha was not interested in converting people to a new religion. He was interested in showing them how to see for themselves. The Pali word ditti can refer to any kind of view, but it often carries the negative connotation of a fixed opinion, a rigid position that we cling to and identify with. The world is full of such views: political views, religious views, scientific views, and they are often the source of immense conflict and suffering. Right view is different. It is not a position to be defended, but a perspective to be cultivated. It is a working hypothesis about the nature of reality, and the entire Eightfold Path is the experiment designed to verify it through our own direct experience. The Buddha famously invited his followers to be ehipassiko, a word that means come and see for yourself. Do not believe it because I say so, he taught, but test it in the laboratory of your own life. Right view is the provisional map. The journey itself is the proof of its accuracy. So what is the content of this map? What does it mean to see the world with right view? At its most fundamental level, right view is the deep experiential penetration of the Four Noble Truths. It is not just intellectually agreeing that there is suffering, but seeing dukkha clearly in our own lives. It is seeing for ourselves how the grasping and aversion of tanha is the direct cause of our anxiety and discontent. It is sensing the possibility of nirvana, the profound peace that comes from the cessation of that craving. And it is understanding that the Eightfold Path is the practical method for realizing that peace. This framework is the basic topography of our spiritual landscape. Within this framework, right view involves seeing reality through the lens of what are known as the three marks of existence. These are the universal characteristics of all conditioned phenomena. The first is anicca, or impermanence. This is the truth that everything is in a constant state of flux. Nothing is static. Our bodies are changing with every breath. Our thoughts and feelings arise and pass away in moments. Relationships evolve, seasons turn, empires rise and fall. The universe is a dynamic, ceaseless flow. There is no solid ground to stand on, no fixed thing to hold on to. The second mark is dukkha, which we have explored. It arises directly from the first. Because everything is impermanent, any attempt to find lasting, ultimate happiness by clinging to impermanent things is doomed to failure. It is like trying to build a house on a rushing river. The inherent instability of the foundation creates a state of perpetual insecurity and unsatisfactoriness. The third mark, which arises from the first two, is anatta, or no-self. This is the insight that within this constantly changing flow of physical and mental phenomena, there is no solid, separate, unchanging I or soul that is the owner of the experience. The experiencer itself is part of the flow. We are not a static noun, but a dynamic verb, a process of seeing, hearing, thinking, and feeling, not a fixed entity who sees, hears, thinks, and feels. To see these three truths directly is the essence of right view. This clear seeing stands in stark contrast to wrong view, or mika ditthi, which the Buddha identified as the very root of dukkha. Wrong views are the distorted maps that lead us deeper into the wilderness of suffering. One of the most prevalent wrong views in our modern world is materialism. This is the belief that happiness and fulfillment can be found primarily through the acquisition of wealth, possessions, status, and sensory pleasure. Our entire culture is built on this premise. If only I get that new car, that bigger house, that promotion, that perfect partner, then I will finally be happy. This view is a direct driver of tanha, fueling an endless cycle of wanting and disappointment, because it seeks permanent satisfaction in things that are fundamentally impermanent. Another common wrong view is eternalism, the belief in a permanent, unchanging soul or self that is separate from our conditioned existence. While this may seem comforting, it leads to a deep-seated clinging to the idea of me and mine, which in turn creates fear of death and resistance to change. Right view provides a middle way between these extremes. It acknowledges the conventional reality of the self that functions in the world, but understands its ultimate nature as an impermanent, interdependent process. It understands that true happiness is not found by manipulating the outer world, but by purifying the inner world. The challenge of seeing clearly is perfectly illustrated in the ancient Indian parable of the blind men and the elephant. A king brought an elephant to his court and asked a group of men who had been blind from birth to describe it. The first man reached out and touched the elephant's broad, sturdy leg. "I see," he said. "An elephant is like a great pillar." The second man touched the elephant's long, flexible trunk. "No," he declared, "an elephant is like a thick snake." The third man happened to grasp the elephant's tail. "You are both wrong," he said. "An elephant is clearly like a rope." A fourth man touched the wide, flat ear and insisted the elephant was like a large fan. Soon, the men were embroiled in a heated argument, each one clinging to his own limited experience, convinced that he alone held the whole truth. The king watched with amusement. Each man was not entirely wrong. His description was true for the part he experienced, but by mistaking a partial truth for the whole truth, they had all arrived at a completely false conclusion. Wrong view is being like one of the blind men, grasping a small piece of reality and proclaiming it to be the entirety. Right view is the ability of the one who can see to behold the whole elephant. The cultivation of right view is the process of learning to see the whole elephant of our existence. It is about understanding that our anxiety does not come from our boss, our finances, or our relationships themselves. It comes from our distorted perception of them, from the stories we tell ourselves about them, from our mistaken view that they should be permanent and conform to our desires. The koan of one hand serves as a powerful, practical tool for developing this clarity. As we struggle with it, our ordinary, wrong views are brought into sharp relief. Our belief that every problem must have a logical, verbal answer is shattered. Our deep-seated assumption that there is a solid me who is supposed to solve the problem is called into question. The koan forces us to abandon our partial, blind man's perspective and to look directly at the nature of the mind itself, to see the whole elephant of our consciousness. Ultimately, right view is the dawn of wisdom that illuminates the entire path. It is the clarity that allows us to walk with confidence and skill. When we begin to truly see the impermanent, unsatisfactory, and selfless nature of things, it fundamentally changes our values. We start to see the futility of chasing fleeting pleasures and the importance of cultivating inner peace. We understand that harming others is, due to our interconnectedness, harming ourselves. This new, clearer vision of reality naturally begins to purify our heart's deepest motivations. A correct map doesn't just show you the terrain, it influences where you want to go. When our seeing becomes clear, our wanting becomes wise. And this leads us directly to the second factor of the path, the essential step of aligning our will with our wisdom, the cultivation of right intention. If right view is the map that gives us a clear understanding of the territory, right intention is the compass of the heart that we use to navigate it. It is the crucial link between our understanding and our will, between seeing the path and actually choosing to walk it. Having a map is useless if we have no desire to travel in the direction it indicates. Right intention, or samma sankappa, is the conscious and deliberate act of aligning our inner world, our motivations, our aspirations, our deepest desires with the wisdom we have begun to cultivate through right view. It is about purifying the why behind everything we do. It shifts the focus from the unconscious, reactive impulses of the ego to a conscious, chosen direction for the heart. It asks us to look beneath the surface of our actions and inquire, what is the real motive here? Is this action coming from a place of craving, fear, and self-interest? Or is it arising from a place of clarity, kindness, and freedom? This purification of motive is traditionally focused on three specific areas, each one serving as a direct antidote to the three mental poisons of greed, hatred, and delusion. The first is the intention of renunciation. In the West, the word renunciation often conjures images of harsh self-denial, of joyless ascetics in hair shirts, rejecting all the pleasures of life. This is a profound misunderstanding. The Pali word nekama is better translated as letting go or relinquishment. It is not born from a hatred of the world, but from a clear seeing of the stress and bondage that comes from clinging to it. It is the direct antidote to the poison of greed and the thirst of tanha. Having seen through right view that all conditioned things are impermanent, we understand the futility of seeking lasting happiness in them. The intention of renunciation is the gentle but firm resolve to loosen our grip. It is the intention to let go of our obsessive attachment to sensory pleasures, recognizing that while they can be enjoyed, they cannot provide ultimate security or fulfillment. It is also the intention to relinquish the ego's endless and exhausting projects of self-aggrandizement. This means letting go of the desperate need for validation, fame, and control. It is the willingness to be simple, to be unseen, to find contentment in what is, rather than what could be acquired. Imagine spending your entire life with your fists tightly clenched, trying to hold on to a handful of sand. The effort is immense, the tension is constant, and the sand trickles through your fingers regardless. The intention of renunciation is the wisdom that realizes the pain of this clenching and the profound relief and freedom that comes from simply opening the hand. It is a movement away from the complexity and burden of more and toward the liberating simplicity of enough. The second of the three right intentions is the intention of goodwill, or avyapada. This is the direct antidote to the poison of hatred, anger, aversion, and ill will. It is the conscious decision to cultivate an attitude of friendliness, kindness, and benevolence toward all living beings. This is not a sentimental or emotional practice. It is not about forcing ourselves to like everyone or to feel a gush of positive emotion on command. It is a commitment of the will. It is the deliberate choice to replace thoughts of malice and resentment with thoughts of warmth and well-wishing. This intention, crucially, must first be directed towards ourselves. For many of us, the most relentless source of ill will in our lives is our own inner critic, the voice that constantly judges, belittles, and condemns us. The intention of goodwill is the practice of cultivating an inner friendship, of learning to treat ourselves with the same kindness and understanding we would offer to a dear friend who is struggling. Once this inner friendliness is established, it naturally begins to radiate outward. We consciously cultivate the wish, "May you be well and happy," and extend it in expanding circles. We start with those it is easy to love, our family and friends. Then we extend it to neutral people, those we pass on the street without a second thought. And then comes the most transformative practice. We extend this intention of goodwill to those we find difficult, those who have hurt us or angered us. We do this not because they deserve it, but because we understand that holding on to anger and resentment is like holding on to a hot coal with the intent of throwing it at someone else. We are the one who gets burned. The intention of goodwill is the cooling water that extinguishes the fire of hatred in our own heart, freeing us from its corrosive power. The third right intention is the intention of harmlessness or compassion, avihimsa. This is the antidote to cruelty and violence, both in thought and in deed. While goodwill is the wish for all beings to be happy, Compassion is the wish for all beings to be free from suffering. Compassion arises when our heart comes into contact with pain, whether our own or another's. It is what the texts describe as the trembling of the heart in the face of suffering. It is a sensitivity to the dukkha of the world, coupled with the aspiration to alleviate it. The intention of harmlessness is a profound commitment to live in a way that minimizes the harm we cause in the world. It invites us to become more mindful of the consequences of our actions, from the words we speak, to the food we consume, to the products we buy. It transforms our relationship with the environment and with all other forms of life. On a deeper level, the intention of harmlessness fundamentally reorients the purpose of our spiritual practice. The journey can begin as a self-centered project. I want to end my suffering. I want to find peace. But as wisdom and compassion grow, this motivation begins to expand. We see that our suffering is inextricably linked with the suffering of all beings. Our personal liberation feels incomplete as long as others are still caught in the fire. The intention of harmlessness plants the seed of the bodhisattva ideality aspiration to attain full awakening for the benefit of all sentient beings. Our practice becomes a gift we offer to the world. These three intentions of letting go, of goodwill, and of harmlessness are not meant to be perfected overnight. They are a daily practice, a constant process of inner course correction. There is a simple story that illustrates this principle. A man looked at a great mountain that cast a perpetual shadow over his village, and he resolved to move it. He knew he could not push the mountain with his shoulder. So, he began a simple practice. Every morning, he would walk to the base of the mountain, pick up a single small stone, carry it to the other side, and set it down. His neighbors watched him and called him a fool, but the man persisted. Day after day, year after year, each conscious thought of letting go when we want to grasp, each silent wish of goodwill towards someone who has angered us, each small choice motivated by compassion, each of these is like moving one small stone. Individually, they seem insignificant, but cultivated patiently and persistently over a lifetime, their cumulative effect can indeed move the mountain of our deeply conditioned habits of greed, hatred, and delusion. In essence, right intention is the active training of the heart. It is the rudder that we consciously use to steer the ship of our life, keeping it aligned with the map of right view. When our underlying motivations are consistently oriented toward clarity, kindness, and freedom, it is inevitable that these inner qualities will begin to color our outer world. A heart committed to letting go will not fuel grasping speech. A heart filled with goodwill will not produce harmful actions. A heart trembling with compassion will naturally seek a livelihood that helps rather than harms. The purified intentions of the heart are the wellspring from which all wholesome engagement with the world flows. And this provides the perfect bridge from the inner cultivation of wisdom to its practical, embodied expression in our daily lives. The pillar of sila, or ethical conduct, which finds its first and most immediate voice in the power and responsibility of our words. With our inner compass oriented by right view and our heart's resolve strengthened by right intention, the path now moves from the internal world of seeing and willing into the external world of doing. It is in our daily lives, through our interactions with others, that our practice truly comes alive and bears fruit. This brings us to the second great pillar of the path, sila, or ethical conduct. This pillar is comprised of three factors: right speech, right action, and right livelihood. These are not a set of restrictive commandments imposed by an external authority, designed to make us feel guilty or constrained. Rather, they are a profound and compassionate training in harmlessness. They are guidelines that flow naturally from a wise and compassionate heart, designed to protect both ourselves and others from suffering and to create the conditions of inner peace necessary for the deeper work of meditation. Of all the ways we interact with the world, speech is perhaps the most frequent, the most powerful, and the most carelessly used. A single word can heal a lifetime of hurt or inflict a wound that never fully closes. Right speech, or samavaka, is the practice of transforming this powerful tool from a potential weapon into an instrument of truth, kindness, and harmony. This practice is traditionally understood in terms of abstaining from 4 types of unskillful speech. The first is abstaining from false speech. This goes deeper than simply not telling lies. It means being a person of integrity, someone whose words are reliable and trustworthy. It means not exaggerating for self-promotion, not making promises we can't keep, and not speaking in ways that intentionally mislead. It is a commitment to living in truth and speaking from that place of clarity. The second is abstaining from slanderous or divisive speech. This is the kind of speech that sets one person against another. It includes malicious gossip, backbiting, and spreading rumors with the intent of damaging someone's reputation or creating discord within a group. The practice of right speech invites us to do the opposite, to be a force for reconciliation. Instead of carrying tales that create division, we look for opportunities to highlight the good in others, to mend broken friendships, and to speak in ways that foster harmony and mutual understanding. The third is abstaining from harsh speech. This is the language of anger, abuse, and contempt. It includes shouting, insulting, name-calling, and the use of cruel sarcasm. Such speech wounds the heart of the other person and poisons the mind of the speaker, leaving a residue of agitation and regret. The antidote is to consciously cultivate gentle speech. This doesn't mean being weak or artificial. It means speaking to others with the same respect and kindness that we ourselves would wish to receive, even when disagreeing or setting boundaries. Finally, the fourth aspect is abstaining from idle chatter. This is the pointless, frivolous gossip and talk that fills so much of our days. It is speech without purpose that serves only to distract the mind, agitate the silence, and waste our precious time and energy. While it may seem harmless, constant idle chatter creates a noisy and superficial mind, making it very difficult to find inner stillness. The practice here is to cultivate what is known as noble silence, a comfortable and restorative quietude, and to speak only when our words are purposeful and beneficial. Right speech is an active and mindful practice. Before we speak, we can pause and ask ourselves a series of questions. Is what I am about to say true? Is it kind? Is it necessary? Is this the right and skillful time to say it? By training ourselves in this way, our speech gradually becomes a reflection of a clear and compassionate mind. Flowing naturally from right speech is right action, or sammakamanta. If speech is the expression of our mind through words, action is its expression through the body. Right action is the commitment to move through the world in a way that is graceful and harmless, ensuring that our physical presence is a source of security and peace for others, not a source of fear or harm. This practice is traditionally defined by abstaining from 3 main types of action. The first is abstaining from taking life. At its most basic level, this is a commitment not to kill other human beings. But in its deeper expression, it is a cultivation of a profound reverence for all life. It invites us to extend our compassion to animals and even the smallest insects, recognizing that all beings share the same fundamental desire to live and to avoid pain. This doesn't mean we can always avoid causing any harm whatsoever, but it means we hold a conscious intention to minimize the harm we cause through our actions. The second aspect is abstaining from taking what is not given. This obviously includes refraining from theft, robbery, and fraud, but it goes much deeper. It is about fostering a profound respect for the property and resources of others. It means being honest in our business dealings, not taking office supplies for personal use, not downloading copyrighted material illegally, not taking credit for someone else's work. It is a principle of absolute integrity and honesty in all our affairs, big and small. The third aspect is abstaining from sexual misconduct. In the Buddha's time, this had specific cultural definitions, but its underlying principle is timeless. In a modern context, it means conducting our sexual lives with awareness, kindness, consent, and responsibility. It means avoiding any form of sexual expression that involves exploitation, manipulation, coercion, or deceit. It is about respecting the hearts, bodies, and existing relationships of others, and ensuring that our sexuality is an expression of genuine connection and care, rather than a source of harm and emotional turmoil for ourselves or anyone else. These three trainings in right action are not just about avoiding bad deeds. They are about cultivating a heart of deep empathy and respect for the intricate web of life in which we are all participants. The third pillar of Sila brings these ethical considerations into the area where we spend the majority of our waking lives, our work. Right livelihood, or sama ajiva, is the practice of earning a living in a way that is honorable and does not contradict the principles of harmlessness. This can be one of the most challenging factors for those of us living in a complex modern economy. The Buddha named 5 specific trades as clear examples of wrong livelihood: dealing in weapons, dealing in living beings, such as raising animals for slaughter or slave trading, dealing in meat production, dealing in intoxicants, and dealing in poisons. The underlying principle is clear. One should avoid work that profits directly from the suffering, delusion, or death of other beings. For us today, right livelihood is an invitation to deep and honest self-reflection. It asks us to examine the impact of our work. Does my profession require me to lie or deceive? Does my company exploit its workers or its customers? Does our work contribute to the destruction of the environment? Does it promote greed, violence, or addiction? These are not easy questions, and the path does not demand that everyone immediately quit their job if it falls short of a perfect ideal. Rather, it is a call to bring our awareness and our ethical values into our professional life. It might mean finding ways to act with more integrity within our current role, advocating for more ethical practices in our company, or perhaps, over time, consciously steering our career in a direction that feels more aligned with our deepest values. It is the recognition that our work life and our spiritual life are not separate, but are in fact deeply intertwined. There is a simple analogy that clarifies the purpose of this entire pillar of Sila. A master carpenter who wishes to build a beautiful, intricate cabinet would never begin with a piece of wood that is warped, twisted, and full of knots. Such material is unsuitable for fine work. First, the wood must be carefully selected, planed, and sanded until it is straight, smooth, and clear. In this analogy, our mind is the wood. Unskillful and unethical actions lying, harming, stealing, exploiting are the forces that warp and twist the mind. They fill it with the hard knots of guilt, the splinters of remorse, and the turbulence of agitation. A mind in such a state is unprepared for the subtle and demanding work of meditation. the practice of sila of right speech, right action, and right livelihoodis, the process of planing the wood. It is the patient and skillful work of smoothing our character, straightening our conduct, and creating a mind that is calm, clear, and free from the inner disturbance of regret. This serene and non-remorseful mind is the ideal ground for the cultivation of deeper states of peace and insight. Ethical conduct is not an end in itself, but the indispensable foundation for mental development. Having established a life of integrity and outer harmony, we have prepared the conditions, both within and without, to turn our attention inward. We are now ready to engage in the direct and transformative work of training the mind itself. This brings us to the next great pillar of the path, the pillar of samadhi, or mental discipline, which begins with the balanced and joyful cultivation of right effort. Having established a life of outer harmony through the practice of sila, we are now prepared to venture deeper into the landscape of the mind. We have planed the wood, making it smooth and workable. Now, we begin the fine carving. This brings us to the third great pillar of the path, samadhi, or mental discipline, the direct training of the heart and mind, the engine that drives this inner cultivation, the energy that propels us forward, is the sixth factor of the path, right effort, or sama vayama. The word effort can be misleading. For many of us, it conjures images of struggle, of gritting our teeth, and forcing our way through obstacles with grim determination. We associate it with tension, stress, and joyless striving. But the right effort transforms this concept entirely. This is not about brute force. It is a skillful, intelligent, and even joyful application of energy, a balanced and life-affirming engagement with our own mental and spiritual development. It is the art of knowing how and when to apply our energy to cultivate a mind that is both serene and resilient. The Buddha, ever the pragmatist, provided a beautifully simple and comprehensive model for this practice. Right effort is a fourfold training, a complete guide to mental gardening. It teaches us precisely what to do with the weeds and flowers that grow in the mind. The first two efforts deal with what is unskillful, the mental states rooted in greed, hatred, and delusion that cause suffering. The first is the effort to prevent the arising of unskillful states that have not yet arisen. A wise gardener does not wait for the entire garden to be overrun with weeds before taking action. They are proactive. They build a fence. They lay down mulch. They protect their precious soil. In our minds, this is the practice of guarding the sense doors. We learn to recognize the triggers that tend to give rise to our particular brand of suffering. If we know that scrolling through a certain social media feed reliably sparks feelings of envy and inadequacy, the effort of prevention might mean consciously choosing to avoid it. If we know that a particular topic of conversation with a family member always leads to anger, we can mindfully steer the conversation in a different direction. This is not avoidance out of fear, but a wise and compassionate protection of our own inner peace. The second effort is to abandon unskillful states that have already arisen. Despite our best preventative efforts, weeds will still sprout. An angry thought will suddenly appear. A wave of desire will wash over us. A cloud of anxiety will descend. The untrained reaction is either to indulge the state, feeding it and letting it take over, or to violently suppress it, trying to force it out of our awareness. Right effort teaches a middle way. We don't get angry at the weed. We simply and skillfully remove it. When anger has arisen, instead of lashing out, we can apply the antidote of a kind thought or a compassionate reflection. We can feel the heat of the anger in our body without judgment and allow it to dissipate on its own. We acknowledge the unskillful state with clarity, and then gently, patiently, we let it go, returning our attention to something more wholesome. The second two efforts focus on what is skillful, the states of mind rooted in generosity, kindness, and wisdom. The third effort is to arouse skillful states that have not yet arisen. A garden is not defined merely by the absence of weeds. It is defined by the beauty of the flowers and the nourishment of the vegetables that we choose to plant. This is the joyful and creative aspect of the path. We can actively decide to cultivate wholesome qualities. If we are feeling neutral or down, we can intentionally bring to mind things we are grateful for, consciously planting the seeds of gratitude. We can reflect on an act of generosity, arousing the beautiful state of mind associated with giving. We can read an inspiring verse or listen to calming music, inviting peace into our hearts. This is a recognition that we are not merely passive victims of our moods. We are active participants in their creation. The fourth and final effort is to maintain and develop skillful states that are already present. This is perhaps the most overlooked but most rewarding part of the practice. When a flower has sprouted, a wise gardener gives it water, sunlight, and nourishment so it can grow strong and beautiful. Similarly, when a moment of genuine peace, joy, or kindness arises in our meditation or our daily life, we should not ignore it or quickly move on to the next thing. Right effort encourages us to savor it. We notice it, we appreciate it, we allow it to permeate our being. If a feeling of calm settles over us during meditation, we learn to rest in it, to let it deepen and expand. This practice is what makes the spiritual path sustainable and joyful. It is not just about struggling with the negative. It is about actively nurturing the positive, reinforcing the very states of mind we wish to make our home. The key to all four of these efforts is balance. This principle is perfectly captured in the story of a monk named Sona. Sona had been a wealthy aristocrat before ordaining as a monk, and he applied the same intense, perfectionistic zeal to his spiritual practice that he had likely applied to his worldly life. He practiced walking meditation with such ferocious determination that the soles of his feet cracked and bled, staining the monastery path with his blood. Yet, despite his heroic effort, he felt he was making no spiritual progress. He grew deeply discouraged and began to think that the monastic life was not for him, and that he should return to his life of luxury. The Buddha, with his telepathic ability, knew Sona's thoughts and paid him a visit. He began not by talking about meditation, but about Sona's former life. "Sona," the Buddha asked, "is it true that before you became a monk, you were a master in playing the lute?" "That is true, Lord," Sona replied. The Buddha continued, "And what would happen, Sona, if the strings of your lute were tuned too tightly? Would it be playable and produce a melodious sound?" "No, Lord, it would not." "And what if the strings were too loose?" "It would also not produce a melodious sound." "But if the strings were tuned just right," the Buddha concluded, "not too tight and not too loose, tuned to a balanced and even pitch, would the lute then be fit to play?" "Yes, Lord, it would." Then the Buddha delivered the vital teaching, "So it is, Sona, with spiritual energy. Effort that is overexerted leads to restlessness and agitation. Effort that is too slack leads to laziness and lethargy. Therefore, Sona, determine to tune your energy to a point of balance. Aim for equilibrium." This story of Sona's lute is the quintessential teaching on right effort. It is the middle way in action, steering a course between the extremes of aggressive, tense striving and passive, complacent laziness. When we apply this wisdom to our koan practice, we see its relevance immediately. The initial tendency of the mind is to tighten the string, to apply intense intellectual force to figure out the answer. This only leads to frustration and mental exhaustion, the state of restlessness. The opposite temptation is to become discouraged, to dismiss the koan as meaningless and give up the state of laxity. Right effort is the art of holding the koan with a perfectly tuned mind, a mind that is relaxed, yet alert, open, yet persistent, gently and consistently, applying attention without force. Likewise, in our daily meditation, right effort is not about forcing the mind to be quiet. It is the gentle, compassionate, and persistent act of returning our attention to the breath over and over again, every time it wanders. It is the joyful energy of showing up to the practice each day, not as a grim duty, but as a profound act of kindness to ourselves. Right effort, then, is the wise and compassionate art of applying our life force. It is the understanding that our mental and spiritual growth is an organic process, like tending a garden, not an industrial process of manufacturing a product. It is not about forcing results through sheer willpower, but about patiently and joyfully creating the ideal conditions for peace and wisdom to blossom in their own time. This balanced, life-affirming energy is what propels us along the path. But it raises a crucial question. Now that we have this wholesome and well-tuned energy, where, precisely, do we direct it? What is the specific field of practice, the focus point for this balanced effort, moment by moment? The answer to that question is the very heart of the Buddha's path to awakening, the seventh factor, the cultivation of right mindfulness. With the balanced and joyful energy of right effort established as the engine of our practice, we now come to the place where this energy is to be applied. We arrive at the very heart of Buddhist meditation, the central faculty that illuminates every other aspect of the path. This is the seventh factor, right mindfulness, or samasati. If right view is the map, and right intention is the compass, right mindfulness is the act of looking at the ground beneath our feet, right here, right now, with absolute clarity. It is the skill of bringing our full, undivided attention to our present moment experience, not as we wish it were, not as we think it should be, but exactly as it is. It is the simple, yet profound, practice of paying attention, on purpose, without judgment. Before we explore what mindfulness is, it is vital to clear away the many popular misconceptions of what it is not. Mindfulness is not an attempt to stop thinking or to empty the mind. The mind produces thoughts naturally, just as the heart beats. To try and force thoughts to stop is a form of violence against our own nature, a tightening of the lute string that only creates more tension. Mindfulness, instead, is about changing our relationship to our thoughts. We learn to see them as passing events in the mind, rather than as absolute truths we must believe and act upon. Furthermore, while mindfulness practice can lead to deep relaxation, it is not simply a relaxation technique. Its primary purpose is not comfort, but clarity. It is a practice of waking up to the full spectrum of our experience, including the parts that are uncomfortable. Finally, it is not a state of blissful trance or an escape from reality. On the contrary, it is a courageous and intimate engagement with reality, a commitment to be fully present for our own life. So, what is the actual practice? The Buddha provided a systematic training ground for our attention, a comprehensive guide known as the 4 foundations of mindfulness. This is a way of applying our awareness to the 4 key areas of our lived experience. The first foundation, and the most common starting point, is mindfulness of the body. The body is our most tangible anchor to the present moment. It is never in the past or the future. It is always right here. The primary practice within this foundation is mindfulness of breathing. We gently rest our attention on the physical sensations of the breath. As it enters and leaves the body, the coolness at the tip of the nostrils, the rise and fall of the abdomen. The breath becomes a home base, a place of refuge to which we can always return when the mind wanders. From the breath, this awareness can expand to include all bodily sensations, the feeling of our feet on the floor, the warmth of our hands, the subtle tingling and pulsing of life within us. By grounding our awareness in the body, we counteract the mind's powerful habit of getting lost in thought. The second foundation is mindfulness of feelings, or, more accurately, of feeling tones, Vedana. Every single moment of our experience, whether it comes through the 5 senses or through the mind, has a feeling tone attached to it. It is either pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral. This is the mind's most primitive and powerful sorting mechanism, and it is the direct trigger for tanha. Our automatic, unconscious reaction is to grasp at the pleasant, push away the unpleasant, and ignore the neutral. Mindfulness practice interrupts this chain reaction. We train ourselves to simply notice the feeling tone as it arises. Ah, this is pleasant. This is unpleasant. This is neutral. We observe it as a fleeting quality of experience, without getting caught in the secondary reaction of craving or aversion. We learn to be with pleasure without clinging, and to be with pain without resistance. This is a direct and radical way of starving the fire of dukkha of its fuel. The third foundation takes us deeper into mindfulness of the mind itself, citta. Here, we learn to observe our mental states as they are, without identifying with them. We notice the mind is feeling angry right now, or the mind is scattered, or the mind is calm and focused. We observe these states with the same impartiality with which a meteorologist might observe the weather. Today is cloudy. Tomorrow might be sunny. The weather is not who we are. In the same way, the state of our mind is not who we are. We are the spacious awareness that recognizes the state. This practice of disidentification is profoundly liberating. We are no longer an angry person, but a person who is temporarily experiencing a state of anger. This space gives us the freedom not to act out on that anger. The fourth foundation is mindfulness of mental objects, or dhammas. This is a more analytical form of mindfulness, where we begin to observe our experience through the clarifying lens of the teachings themselves. We might notice a wave of desire arise and see it clearly as an instance of tanha. We might feel sluggish and unmotivated and recognize it as the mental hindrance of sloth and torpor. Or we might feel a sense of inner peace and recognize it as a factor of enlightenment. This is where wisdom and mindfulness begin to merge, where we are not just observing reality, but seeing its underlying patterns and laws in real time. Let us try a brief moment of this practice together. Right now, there is nothing to do, nothing to achieve, simply an invitation to arrive in the present moment. You can close your eyes or just lower your gaze. First, bring your attention to the feeling of your body sitting. Feel the contact with the chair, the weight of your body. And now, gently guide your attention to the feeling of your breath, wherever you feel it most clearly. It might be the cool air entering your nostrils, or the gentle rise and fall of your chest or abdomen. Don't try to change your breath in any way. Just let it be as it is. Rest your awareness on the simple, physical sensation of one in-breath and one out-breath. Your mind will certainly wander. That is what minds do. When you notice it has wandered, without any judgment or frustration, just gently, kindly, acknowledge where it went and then guide it back home to the breath, just for one more breath, in and out. Now you can let go of the attention on the breath and open your eyes. This simple act of returning again and again with kindness is the essence of the practice. The greatest power of mindfulness lies in its ability to create a space between stimulus and response. In our ordinary, unmindful lives, the process is instantaneous. A driver cuts us off in traffic, stimulus, and we immediately react with a surge of anger and a blast of the horn, response. A critical email arrives, stimulus, and we are instantly filled with anxiety and defensiveness, response. We operate on autopilot, slaves to our conditioned habits. Mindfulness inserts what has been called a sacred pause into this process. The driver cuts us off. In the space of mindfulness, we feel the heat of anger rising in our chest. We notice the thought, "What an idiot," forming in our mind. We feel the impulse in our hand to hit the horn. But because we are aware of these things as they are happening, we are not compelled by them. We have a choice. We can see the impulse, and we can choose to let it go. We can choose to breathe instead. This space, this moment of choice, is the birthplace of freedom and wisdom. It is how we stop shooting the second arrow into ourselves. A helpful metaphor for mindfulness is that of a gatekeeper standing at the main gate of a walled city. The city is our mind. Thoughts, feelings, and sensations are the travelers constantly arriving at the gate, seeking entry. The gatekeeper's job is not to violently attack every traveler, nor is it to ignore their post and let chaos reign. The gatekeeper's job is simply to be aware. They stand at their post, alert and diligent. They simply know who is entering and who is leaving. Ah, the gatekeeper notes. A thought of sadness is arriving. A feeling of boredom is leaving. A memory from the past is here. There is no judgment, no entanglement in their stories. There is only clear, calm, knowing. This quality of silent, knowing presence is the very ear that is capable of hearing the sound of one hand. The thinking mind, with all its noise and analysis, can never hear it. It is trying to create a sound, to solve a problem. But mindfulness does not try to solve anything. It simply listens. It listens to the silence between our thoughts. It listens to the feeling of frustration when no answer comes. It is the vast, open, receptive quality of awareness in which the non-verbal, non-conceptual truth of the koan can finally dawn. The answer is not a thought to be found, but a state of silent knowing to be realized. And mindfulness is the doorway into that state. Mindfulness is a skill, one that is developed through the patient and balanced application of right effort. As we apply this gentle, persistent energy to staying present, our awareness naturally becomes more stable, consistent, and less easily distracted. Our mind, which was once like a flickering candle flame in a strong wind, becomes steady, bright, and unwavering. This calm, stable, and unified awareness, when cultivated over time, naturally deepens and blossoms into the eighth and final factor of the path. It evolves into a state of profound mental absorption and stillness. This is the state of right concentration. As we apply the balanced energy of right effort to the practice of right mindfulness, something remarkable begins to happen. The mind, which was once like 1,000 scattered streams flowing in every direction, begins to gather itself. The fragmented rays of our attention, previously dissipated on endless distractions, start to converge into a single, steady, and powerful beam. This state of a collected, unified, and unwavering mind is the eighth and final factor of the path, right concentration, or samadhi. It is the culmination of the pillar of mental discipline, the fruit of a mind that has been calmed, purified, and strengthened through diligent practice. If mindfulness is the act of holding the lens steady, concentration is the focused light that passes through it, capable of illuminating the deepest truths of our existence. It is vital, from the outset, to distinguish right concentration from the ordinary, everyday concentration we all experience. A watchmaker repairing a delicate timepiece is concentrated. A musician lost in a complex piece of music is concentrated. An athlete in the zone during a competition is concentrated. Even a predator, like a cat waiting motionlessly at a mouse hole, possesses a powerful, one-pointed focus. But this is not right concentration. Worldly concentration can be used for any purpose, skillful or unskillful. A sniper focusing on a target through a scope is highly concentrated, but their intention is one of harm. Right concentration is right precisely because it is built upon the foundation of the previous 7 path factors. It is guided by the wisdom of right view and motivated by the compassion of right intention. It is supported by the inner peace that comes from a life of sila, or ethical conduct. Its purpose is not worldly gain, the defeat of an opponent, or predatory success. Its sole purpose is liberation from suffering and the realization of ultimate truth. It is a wholesome, ethically grounded unification of the mind. The journey into right concentration is a gradual deepening of stillness. As we sit in meditation, resting our mindful attention on an object like the breath, we begin to encounter the primary obstacles to mental calm. These are known as the 5 hindrances. The first is sensual desire, the mind's tendency to pull away from the meditation object toward a more pleasant thought, memory, or fantasy. The second is ill will, the arising of anger, resentment, or aversion that agitates the mind. The third is sloth and torpor, a state of mental heaviness, dullness, and sleepiness, where the mind loses its brightness. The fourth is restlessness and worry, the classic monkey mind, jumping from thought to thought, filled with anxiety and agitation. And the fifth is skeptical doubt, a corrosive lack of confidence in the practice, the teacher, or our own ability to succeed. As we consistently apply right effort and right mindfulness, gently returning our attention to the breath, again and again, these 5 hindrances begin to lose their power. They don't necessarily vanish forever, but we learn not to feed them. A space opens up. As they temporarily recede, the mind is able to stay with the meditation object for longer and longer periods without being pulled away. This initial stage of sustained focus is known as access concentration. It is the gateway to deeper states of absorption. The mind has arrived at the threshold of profound tranquility. It has become a powerful instrument, ready for the deeper work. Beyond access concentration lie the deeper states of meditative absorption known as the jhanas. These are states of profound bliss and one-pointedness, where the mind becomes completely unified with its object. While a detailed technical description is complex, we can understand the first of these states as being characterized by several factors. The mind is still gently directing itself toward the object of meditation, but it is also filled with an exhilarating, and joyful energy, a spiritual rapture known as piti. This is not the excitement of worldly pleasure, but a deep, uplifting thrill that arises from a mind free from the hindrances. Accompanying this is a profound sense of happiness and contentment, or sukha, a deep and peaceful bliss that permeates the entire body and mind. It is crucial to understand that these jhanic states are not the final goal of the path. They are not an escape, but rather a powerful tool. A mind that has been bathed and purified in these states of profound calm and bliss emerges immeasurably strengthened, cleansed of subtle defilements, and extraordinarily fit for the work of insight. Two classic metaphors beautifully illustrate the purpose and power of concentration. The first is that of a jar of muddy water. Our ordinary scattered mind is like this jar of water, constantly being shaken and stirred by the winds of the five hindrances. The water is so cloudy and turbulent that it is impossible to see through it. We might try to fix the water by stirring it more, by analyzing the mud, or by trying to scoop the mud out, but this only makes it murkier. The practice of samadhi is the simple wisdom of placing the jar on a stable surface and letting it be completely still. We don't have to do anything to the mud. Through the force of its own nature, the heavy mud of the hindrances begins to settle to the bottom. The water doesn't become clear because we forced it to. It becomes clear because we stopped disturbing it. The result is water that is pure, transparent, and potablaya mind that is fit for the highest purpose. The second metaphor builds on the first. Once the water is clear, it can function like the surface of a perfectly still lake on a clear, moonlit night. When the mind is choppy, with the waves of thought and emotion, it can only reflect a distorted, fragmented, and broken image of the moon. This is our ordinary perception of reality, fragmented and inaccurate. But when the winds of the hindrances have ceased, and the surface of the lake-like mind becomes utterly still and tranquil through concentration, it can reflect a perfect, complete, and shimmering image of the full moon above. This moon is wisdom, insight, the direct seeing of reality as it is. Right concentration, therefore, is not an escape from reality. It is the practice of creating the perfect inner conditions to see reality with absolute, undistorted clarity. It is the sharpening of the sword of wisdom. With a mind so powerfully unified, so profoundly stilled, the great truths of the path are no longer matters of philosophical debate. They become self-evident realities. When this concentrated mind is directed to look at experience itself, it sees the truth of anicca, impermanence, with startling intimacy. It directly witnesses the arising and passing of every sensation, every thought, with no solid entity behind them. The truth of dukkha is seen not as a depressing idea, but as the inherent stress in any clinging to these fleeting phenomena. And the truth of anatta, no self, is realized directly as the illusion of a separate observer collapses in the face of the unified flow of experience. The koan of one hand is not solved by this concentrated mind. Rather, in the deep silence and non-duality of samadhi, the question itself dissolves. The answer is revealed not as a concept, but as the very state of unified, silent knowing. There is no longer a separate hearer and a sound to be heard. There is only the seamless reality of the one hand. The cultivation of sila, samadhi, and panya, ethical conduct, mental discipline, and wisdom is now complete. As a framework, we have assembled and learned to use the full toolkit of the Eightfold Path. We possess an instrument of awareness that is at once ethical, energized, mindful, and profoundly unified. We are now fully equipped to turn this powerful, purified consciousness back toward the fundamental nature of existence itself. not just as a passing observation, but as the primary object of our deep and sustained inquiry. Our journey now takes us from the how of the path to the what of reality, beginning with a direct and unflinching contemplation of the first and most universal of all truths, the relentless, liberating dance of impermanence. Having journeyed through the intricate landscape of the Eightfold Path, we have arrived at a new vantage point. The mind, once scattered and turbulent, has been gathered and stilled. The Sila foundation has provided us with stability. Right effort has energized our practice. Mindfulness has taught us to see, and concentration has sharpened our vision into a powerful, penetrating instrument. We have shifted from the work of building the instrument to the work of using it. Now, we turn this clear, calm, and unified mind toward the nature of reality itself. And the first and most fundamental characteristic it perceives, the universal truth that underpins all conditioned existence, is the great dance of impermanence, or anicca. To the ordinary, untrained mind, the idea of impermanence can feel like a threat, a source of sadness and insecurity. It speaks of decay, loss, and death. It reminds us that everything we love will one day be gone. But to the mind trained in wisdom, the direct seeing of anicca is not a depressing philosophy. It is a profound and liberating release. It is the key that unlocks the prison of our clinging. It is the realization that reality is not a static collection of solid objects, but a vibrant, dynamic, and ever-changing flow. To embrace impermanence is to embrace life itself in its totality. We can observe this universal law at every level of existence. On the grandest scale, we see it in the cosmos. Stars are born, burn brightly for billions of years, and then die, collapsing into black holes or seeding the universe with new elements. Galaxies collide and merge. On our own planet, mountains are slowly worn down by wind and rain, coastlines are reshaped by the sea, and the seasons turn in a relentless, beautiful cycle. Bringing our attention closer, we see impermanence in our own lives. The car we cherish will one day rust and fail. The home we build will eventually decay. Our most treasured relationships evolve and change. The dynamics we have with our parents, our partners, and our children are not the same today as they were a decade ago, or as they will be a decade from now. Most intimately, we witness this truth in the flesh and bone of our own bodies. The body you inhabit today is not the same body you had 7 years ago. It is said that nearly every cell has been replaced. From moment to moment, there is a ceaseless process of change. Air is taken in and released. Food is consumed and transformed into energy. Our hair and nails grow. We age. The face that looks back at us from the mirror is a slow-motion film of transformation. We are not a fixed physical entity, but a biological process, a walking, breathing testament to anicca. While seeing impermanence in the outer world is relatively easy, the most transformative practice is to witness it in the inner world of our own consciousness. To do this is to use the tool of mindfulness to observe the ceaseless river of our own mind. Sit for a moment and watch your thoughts. A memory of breakfast appears, unbidden. It stays for a moment, and then, just as mysteriously, it vanishes, replaced by a worry about a future appointment. That too dissolves, giving way to a line from a song, which is then replaced by a judgment about the meditation itself. Thoughts arise. They perform their momentary dance on the stage of the mind, and they cease. They are like bubbles rising to the surface of a pond, shimmering for an instant before popping and disappearing without a trace. Which of these thousands of daily thoughts is the real you? The same is true of our emotions. A wave of sadness or loneliness might wash over us. It can feel all-consuming, as if I am sad. But if we watch it with mindful attention, we see that it is not a solid, static thing. It has a beginning, a period of rising intensity, a peak, and then, inevitably, it begins to subside. It flows through us, and if we do not cling to it or feed it with stories, it passes. A surge of joy or excitement behaves in the same way. It is a temporary weather pattern, not the permanent climate of our being. The mind is not a solid object. It is a flowing stream of events. To observe this inner flux directly is to have an undeniable, experiential insight into the truth of anicca. Here we discover the precise mechanism of dukkha. Suffering is not caused by the fact of change itself. Change is neutral. Suffering is caused by our resistance to change. It is the friction generated when our ego hitch craves stability, security, and permanence collides with the fundamental law of reality, which is flow, instability, and change. We live in a constant, undeclared war with anicca. When we experience something pleasant, a happy relationship, a moment of success, a feeling of peace of mind, driven by tanha, immediately tries to grasp it, to hold on to it, to make it permanent. We are trying to dam the river, to build a fortress around a fleeting experience. This effort is exhausting, and it poisons the pleasure itself with the anxiety of its inevitable loss. Conversely, when we experience something unpleasant physical pain, a difficult emotion, a challenging situation, our mind resists. It pushes it away, denies it, and struggles against it. We are trying to build a wall to stop the river's flow. This resistance is also exhausting, and, paradoxically, it often intensifies and prolongs the very suffering we are trying to escape. The liberating alternative is to learn to move with the flow, to become a skillful surfer on the waves of life rather than trying to command the ocean. The contemplation of impermanence becomes our surfboard. When we are experiencing a moment of physical or emotional pain, the mindful recognition this is impermanent, this too shall pass, is not a form of spiritual bypassing or denial. It is a powerful antidote to the second arrow of fear. The greatest torment of pain is often the secret terror that it will last forever. Remembering anicca dissolves this fear. It allows us to soften around the pain, to give it space to be what it is, a temporary energy pattern flowing through our system, which allows it to pass more quickly. When we are experiencing a moment of great joy, the gentle whisper of anicca is not there to spoil the fun. It is there to enhance it. It frees us from the anxious, desperate need to cling. Knowing that this beautiful moment is transient, we are moved to cherish it more fully, to be completely present for it, to absorb its beauty without the pressure of trying to make it last forever. It transforms our relationship with pleasure from one of grasping ownership to one of profound gratitude. We can love people more completely when we understand we do not own them. We can enjoy success more freely when we are not identified with it. We learn to hold our lives with an open hand rather than a clenched fist. This profound insight shines a clarifying light on our struggle with the koan. The mind's frantic search for a fixed, final, verbal answer to the sound of one hand is a direct expression of its craving for permanence and certainty. It wants to grasp the solution, possess it, and store it away as a permanent trophy for the ego. The koan's genius is that it utterly refuses to cooperate with this craving. It is a direct, embodied teaching in impermanence. The sound, the realization, is not a thing that can be grasped or held. It is a momentary, ungraspable insight that dawns in a moment of stillness and is gone the next. It is as transient and unownable as any other event in the stream of consciousness. The koan teaches us to let go of our need for a solid answer and to become comfortable in the flowing, uncertain nature of direct experience. To deeply and truly accept the truth of impermanence is to let go of our lifelong search for solid ground. It is to realize that there is no solid ground to be found, and that this is not a tragedy, but a liberation. We can finally stop fighting with reality and learn to dance with it. This direct, experiential seeing that everything, our body, our mind, our world is a dynamic, selfless process of arising and passing away, leads us to an even deeper and more subtle inquiry. If all things are merely a temporary confluence of changing conditions, devoid of any permanent essence, what is their ultimate nature? If we were to look at a flower, a thought, or even ourselves, and strip away all the constituent parts, what would be left? This question opens the door to one of the most profound, challenging, and ultimately freeing teachings in the entire Buddhist tradition, the wisdom of emptiness, or Shunyata. The path of understanding, like a spiral, often brings us back to the same vistas, but from a higher elevation, with a clearer view. We have walked the path of the eightfold disciplines. We have trained the mind through effort, mindfulness, and concentration. We have looked deeply into the nature of impermanence, seeing how everything we hold dear, including our own bodies and minds, is in a constant state of flux, like a river flowing endlessly to the sea. We have seen that the solid ground we believe we stand on is, in fact, a dance of changing conditions. This understanding of anicca, of impermanence, and anatta, of no self, prepares us for one of the most profound, most liberating, and most frequently misunderstood insights of the Buddhist path. It leads us directly to the heart of reality itself, to the concept of Shunyata, or emptiness. When an American ear hears the word emptiness, it often conjures images of lack, of a desolate void, of nothingness. It can sound nihilistic, even frightening. We think of an empty house, an empty bank account, an empty heart. Emptiness, in our common language, is a deficiency, but in the context of this wisdom, Shunyata is precisely the opposite. It is not a lack, but a fullness. It is not nothingness, but a boundless potential. Emptiness is not the fact that things do not exist. Emptiness is the reason they can exist at all. It is the ultimate freedom, the freedom of no-thingness. To understand this, let us begin with a simple object, perhaps the cup from which you drink your morning coffee. We look at it and say, "This is a cup." It seems simple, it seems solid, real, an independent object. But the wisdom of Shunyata invites us to look more deeply. Where is the cupness of this cup? Is it in the ceramic? No, the ceramic is made of clay and water and minerals from the earth. Is the cupness in the shape? No, the shape was an idea in a designer's mind, a form given by a potter's hands or a factory's machine. Is it in the glaze? No. The glaze is composed of chemical compounds, heated to a specific temperature. The cup, as we hold it, is entirely made of non-cup elements. It is made of the earth, the rain that nourished the earth, the sun that baked it, the mind that conceived it, the hands that formed it, the fire that hardened it, the global economy that brought it to your kitchen. If you were to remove all these non-cup elements, the sunshine, the water, the earth, the human effort, what would be left of the cup? The answer is nothing at all. This is the meaning of emptiness. The cup is empty of a separate, independent, self-contained existence. It does not have a core essence of cup that exists apart from everything else. Its existence is entirely dependent on the existence of everything that is not it. It is a temporary, conditional manifestation of the entire universe, and because it is empty of a solid, unchanging self, it is able to be a cup. If it were not empty, if it had a fixed, eternal essence, it could never have been formed from clay, and it could never break and return to the earth. Emptiness is its potential to be, to change, and to become. The great Zen master, Thich Nhat Hanh, often used the example of a flower. A flower is beautiful, vibrant, seemingly a thing in itself. But if we look with the eyes of Shunyata, we see that the flower is made of sunshine, of a cloud, of the rain. We see the soil, the minerals, the gardener, and the entire cosmos within that single blossom. The flower is empty of a separate self. It is full of everything else. This is not poetry. It is a profound statement of reality. This is the teaching of dependent origination, that all phenomena arise in dependence upon other phenomena. This is, because that is, this ceases to be, because that ceases to be, nothing exists on its own. Now, we must turn this penetrating gaze upon the most cherished object of all, the one we are most convinced is solid and real, our self, our ego. Who are you? You might say your name, but your name was given to you. You might say, I am my body. But your body is, like the cup, a collection of non-body elements. It is the food you have eaten, the water you have drunk, the air you have breathed, the DNA from your parents and ancestors. Every cell in your body is replaced over time. The body you have now is not the body you had 7 years ago. So where is the permanent you in this constantly changing form? Perhaps you say, I am my mind, my thoughts, my feelings. But where do these come from? Your thoughts are shaped by the language you speak, the books you've read, the conversations you've had, the culture you grew up in. Your feelings arise in response to conditions. They are impermanent, changing, like the weather. The feeling of joy you had yesterday is not here now. The anxiety you feel about tomorrow is not here now. They are empty of a solid, unchanging reality. So if you remove the food, the air, the culture, the education, the memories, the relationships, what is left? Where is the central, independent I that owns all these experiences? The deep, honest search for this I reveals that it cannot be found as a separate entity. The self, just like the cup and the flower, is empty of an inherent independent existence. It is a process, a confluence of countless streams of causes and conditions. This is not a cause for despair. This is the source of ultimate freedom. As long as we believe in a solid, separate self, we are in a prison. We must defend this self, promote it, worry about its past and future. We feel its insults. We are inflated by its praise. This solid self is the source of our deepest anxieties. But when we see its empty nature, we are liberated. We see that we are not a fixed noun, but a fluid verb. We are not a thing, but a happening. We are interconnected with all of life. And this brings us back, finally, to our koan. What is the sound of one hand? We have been searching for it. This sound. The rational mind wants to find it. Is it in the hand? Number. Is it in the air? Number. Is it in the ear of the person listening? Number. The sound of one hand is empty. It is empty of a separate, independent existence. It does not exist in any one place. Its sound arises from the coming together of all conditions: the hand, the air, the mind, the intention, the silence that surrounds it. To hear the sound of one hand is to have a direct, non-conceptual experience of Shunyata. It is the moment when the mind stops its frantic search for a thing called sound and simply merges with the entire, seamless reality of the present moment. In that moment of hearing, there is no hearer, no sound, and no act of hearing as three separate things. There is only the unified, holistic, empty, and luminous event itself. The Heart Sutra, one of the most essential texts on this topic, proclaims, "Form is emptiness. Emptiness is form. Form is not other than emptiness. Emptiness is not other than form." This is not a riddle. It is a declaration of identity. The wave is the water. The water is the wave. The form of the cup is its emptiness of a separate self. The emptiness of the cup is what allows it to have a form. They are two sides of a single reality. The noise of the world, the sound of two hands, is form. The silent, all-encompassing reality that allows that noise to happen, the sound of one hand, is emptiness. They are not two. Understanding this intellectually is one thing. To realize it, to feel it in your bones, is the beginning of the end of suffering. When you see the empty nature of things, your craving and aversion have no solid ground to stand on. How can you desperately grasp a cloud? How can you hate a flowing river? When a difficult situation arises, you see it not as a solid, menacing block of negativity, but as a temporary confluence of conditions, empty of any inherent power to harm the empty self. Your fear loosens its grip. Your anxiety about the future lessens because you see that the future is not a fixed destination, and you are not a fixed entity who will arrive there. There is only this empty, open, creative present. This realization of emptiness is not a destination, but a doorway. It dissolves the illusion of separation and opens a new vista, a perception of the world, not as a collection of isolated objects, but as a seamless, interwoven tapestry. It is a doorway into a profound understanding of connection, an understanding known as interbeing. The revelation of emptiness, of Shunyata, can at first feel like standing at the edge of a vast, silent canyon. The intellect is humbled, the solid ground of the ego dissolves, and we are left in a space of profound openness. But this is not an empty void. It is a fertile ground. If we stay with this understanding, if we allow our eyes to adjust to its light, we begin to see that this vast canyon is not empty at all. It is teeming with life, and everything within it is connected by a million invisible threads. We step through the doorway of emptiness and find ourselves in the warm, vibrant, and living reality of interbeing. This term, interbeing, was beautifully articulated by the Zen master Thich Nhat Hanh to bring the profound wisdom of Shunyata into our daily lives, into our very hearts. It is the lived, felt experience of emptiness. If emptiness is the diagnosis that we are not a separate, solid self, then interbeing is the description of what we truly are, a nexus of relationships, a process that is inextricably woven into the fabric of everything else. The English language teaches us to say, "I am, you are, the tree is." It creates a world of separate nouns. Interbeing invites us to see the world as verbs. We do not just be, we interbe. The core of this teaching can be summarized in a simple, revolutionary phrase: "You are, therefore I am." Let us take the most ordinary of objects, a single sheet of paper. Our ordinary mind sees it as a separate thing. We can name it, buy it, write on it, discard it. But if we look with the eyes of interbeing, we see a universe. To be here, this sheet of paper needed the sunshine. So the sun is in the paper. This paper needed a cloud to float in the sky and release the rain. So the cloud is in the paper. The rain nourished the tree from which this paper was made. So the rain and the tree are in the paper. The paper needed the logger to cut the tree, and so the logger and the wheat for the bread he ate for breakfast are also here, in this sheet of paper. It needed the truck driver who brought the log to the mill, the factory worker who operated the machine, the electricity that powered the plant. It needed the ideas and inventions of countless ancestors. If we were to return the sunshine to the sun, the cloud to the sky, the rain to the river, the tree to the forest, the logger to his parents, there would be no sheet of paper left. So the paper is empty of a separate self, but it is full of the entire cosmos. It interis with everything else. This is not a mystical belief or a sentimental poem. It is a simple, observable reality. And the same is true for us. Look at your own hand. This hand is not just your hand. In it, you can see your mother and your father and their parents and all your ancestors. Their DNA is the very blueprint of this hand. You can see the countless meals you have eaten, the farmers who grew the food, the sun and rain and soil that nourished the plants. All of them are present, right now, in the cells of your hand. Your existence is a continuation. You are the latest manifestation of an ancient and unbroken stream of life. Consider your breath. In this very moment, as you inhale, you are taking the atmosphere into your body. This air has been breathed by countless beings before you. It contains the oxygen gifted to us by the trees of the Amazon and the phytoplankton of the oceans. With every exhale, you are giving yourself back to the world, providing the carbon dioxide that those same trees will breathe. This constant, rhythmic exchange is the most immediate, undeniable proof of interbeing. The boundary between you and the world is as porous and imaginary as a line drawn on water. You are breathing the world, and the world is breathing you. We are in a constant, vital dialogue with all of life. This understanding is not merely a philosophical curiosity. It is the very foundation for genuine compassion and the end of a great deal of our suffering. So much of our anxiety, anger, and despair comes from the illusion of separation. We feel that we are a vulnerable, isolated self, and the world is a separate, often hostile place, full of other, separate, hostile people. We think, "He hurt me. This situation is against me. I need to protect myself from them." This creates a state of perpetual conflict, both internally and externally. Interbeing dismantles this fortress of the self. When you truly see that the person who has angered you is also a product of countless causes and conditions, that their consciousness is made of the same elements as yours, their suffering ceases to be an alien phenomenon. You see that their anger comes from their own pain, a pain that is rooted in their own web of conditions, their own misunderstandings. It does not excuse harmful actions, but it changes your relationship to them. The desire for revenge dissolves, replaced by a deep understanding that their suffering and your suffering are connected. Harming another becomes an absurd act. It is like the left hand, in its anger, picking up a hammer to smash the right hand. Why would it do that? Both hands are part of the same body. When the right hand is in pain, the left hand naturally moves to soothe it. This is the natural movement of compassion born from the wisdom of interbeing. There is a beautiful and ancient metaphor in Mahayana Buddhism used to describe this reality, the net of Indra. Imagine a vast, cosmic net that stretches out infinitely in all directions. At every single intersection of the net's threads hangs a single, brilliant, perfectly polished jewel. Each jewel is unique, yet each one reflects on its surface every other jewel in the entire, infinite net. And the reflection of each jewel also contains the reflection of all the other jewels, and so on, ad infinitum. You are one of those jewels. Your life, your consciousness, is a reflection of the entire cosmos, and the entire cosmos is reflected in you. When you look at another person, you are looking at another jewel, in which you are also reflected. Your joy is reflected in them, and their sorrow is reflected in you. This is interbeing. There is no separation. There is only an infinite, shimmering web of mutual reflection and co-creation. Now, we can bring this wisdom back to our koan. What is the sound of one hand? The very question assumes a separation that interbeing reveals to be an illusion. It assumes there is a hearer, you, and an object to be heard, the sound. It creates a subject-object duality. But from the perspective of Indra's net, this is a misunderstanding. The one who hears, the action of hearing, and the sound that is heard are not three separate entities. They are a single event. They arise together. They exist together. They cease together. They inter-are. To hear the sound of one hand is to dissolve this perceived separation. It is to become the jewel that is aware of its own reflection of the entire net. In that moment of pure, non-dual awareness, there is no you listening for a sound. There is only the listening, the consciousness, the sound, the silence. They all merge into one seamless, vibrant whole. The koan is not a question to be answered, but a barrier of separation to be dissolved. The resolution is not a new piece of information, but a radical shift in perspective from being to interbeing. Realizing this truth transforms our relationship with the world. The practice of mindfulness becomes not just about paying attention to our breath or our feelings, but about paying attention to our profound connection with all things. Washing the dishes is no longer a chore, but a chance to be in dialogue with the water, with the fire that heated it, with the hands that made the bowl. Walking in a city is no longer an exercise in navigating a crowd of strangers, but an experience of moving through a sea of fellow jewels. This understanding is the fertile soil from which the flowers of true kindness and compassion grow. If we know, in our hearts, that we are all deeply connected, that we inter-are, then the only rational and sane response is to act with love. Knowing the map of interbeing is the first step. The next is to learn to walk this sacred territory with a warm and open heart, to actively cultivate the qualities that water these seeds of connection until they blossom for the benefit of all. The wisdom of interbeing provides us with a new map of reality, one where the borders between self and other are seen as illusory. It is a profound intellectual insight, but wisdom alone can be cold, like the light of a distant star. For this understanding to transform our lives, to heal our anxiety and soothe our hearts, it must be paired with its warm and beating counterpart. That counterpart is compassion. The mind may grasp the logic of interbeing, but it is the heart that learns to live it. This is where we move from seeing the truth to embodying it, through the active, intentional cultivation of a boundless heart. In the Buddhist tradition, the primary qualities of this boundless heart are known as metta and karuna. These are not just fleeting emotions that we hope to feel one day. They are trainable skills, mental muscles that can be intentionally developed through practice. A practice known as bhavana, which means to cultivate or to bring into being. We are learning to actively generate the warmth that can melt the ice of separation and fear. Let us begin with metta, which is often translated as loving kindness. This is not the sentimental, transactional love of romance, nor is it mere fondness for those who please us. Metta is a universal, unconditional benevolence. It is the simple, powerful wish for all beings to be happy and well. Think of the sun. The sun shines its warmth down on everything, without discrimination on the beautiful flower and the jagged rock, on the saint and the sinner. It does not ask if a being is worthy of its warmth, it simply gives. Metta is the cultivation of this inner sun, and the practice of metta, critically, begins with the self. For many of us in the modern world, steeped in self-criticism and judgment, this is the most difficult and most important step. We cannot offer a drink to a thirsty person if our own cup is empty. To try and generate love for others while holding on to a core of self-loathing is like trying to build a house on a foundation of sand. So we start by turning the warmth of the sun inward. The practice can be simple. Seated in a quiet space, you can gently place a hand over your heart and silently repeat simple, earnest phrases. May I be safe. May I be healthy in body and in mind. May I be peaceful and at ease. May I be truly happy. At first, the inner critic may object. It may say, "You don't deserve it." We acknowledge that voice with mindfulness, and we gently return to the phrases. We are not trying to force a feeling, but simply planting the seeds of kindness. Over time, this practice begins to soften the hardened soil of the heart. It creates a baseline of inner friendship, a safe harbor within yourself. Once we have established some measure of this self-directed kindness, we expand the circle. We bring to mind a beloved friend, a mentor, or even a pet, someone for whom it is effortless to feel warmth and appreciation. We hold their image in our mind and extend the same wishes to them. May you be safe. May you be healthy. May you be peaceful. Wealth. May you be peaceful. May you be happy. We let the feeling of metta flow from our heart to theirs. Then, the practice stretches us further. We bring to mind a neutral person, someone we see regularly but have no strong feelings about, like a cashier at the grocery store or a person we pass on our daily commute. We extend the same wishes of metta to them. This step is revolutionary. It teaches the heart that kindness does not require a pre-existing relationship. It can be our default response to all beings. The most challenging stage, the true alchemy of the heart, is to then bring to mind a difficult person, someone who has hurt us or caused us frustration. Here, it is crucial to understand that metta is not about condoning harmful actions or forcing a false reconciliation. It is about protecting our own heart from being consumed by resentment. It is the radical recognition that this person's harmful actions likely stem from their own deep suffering and ignorance. With this wisdom, we can wish, for our own sake as much as theirs, may you be free from the suffering that causes you to act this way. May you too find peace. May you be happy. This is the ultimate act of reclaiming our own inner freedom. Finally, we expand the circle of metta to include all beings, everywhere, without exception, until the heart feels as boundless as the sky itself. Flowing naturally from metta is karuna, or compassion. If metta is the wish for all beings to be happy, karuna is the wish for all beings to be free from suffering. The ancient texts describe karuna as the trembling or quivering of the heart in response to seeing pain. It is the immediate, visceral recognition of shared vulnerability. It is not the same as pity. Pity creates distance. It looks down from above and says, "Oh, you poor thing." Compassion is built on the wisdom of interbeing. It recognizes the suffering of another and says, I know this feeling. This pain is not foreign to me. Your suffering is my suffering. True compassion is not a passive state of sadness. It is energized by the desire to help, to act, to alleviate the suffering, if possible, and it must be balanced with wisdom. Drowning in another person's pain is not helpful to anyone. True karuna is like a skilled physician who can treat a terrible wound with focus and care without becoming emotionally overwhelmed by the sight of it. We learn to stand firmly on the shore of our own well-being while extending a hand to those struggling in the water. We cultivate the capacity to be with suffering our own and others with a courageous and tender heart. This brings us to the great parable of the Buddha and the raging elephant. Nalagiri, a plotter seeking to harm the Buddha, got the royal elephant drunk and enraged and unleashed it on the path where the Buddha was walking. The elephant charged, a terrifying, unstoppable force of pure rage. The Buddha's attendant, Ananda, tried to stand in front of him to protect him, but the Buddha calmly told him to step aside. He did not run. He did not prepare to fight. He simply stood his ground and radiated a powerful, unwavering energy of pure metta towards the enraged animal. The elephant, thundering towards him, began to slow. The force of this unconditional love and lack of fear was something it had never encountered. It stopped before the Buddha, became completely calm, and knelt down before him. This story illustrates the true nature of metta and karuna. They are not weak, sentimental, or passive. They are a force. They are a power greater than anger, greater than fear. They are the ultimate strength, the ability to meet the world's violence and pain, not with more violence, but with a radical tenderness that has the power to transform. How then does this apply to our koan, to the sound of one hand? The journey with a koan is a microcosm of our journey through life. We sit with it, and we encounter difficulty. The mind races, then gets stuck. We feel frustration, doubt, anxiety, and even anger at ourselves for not getting it. These are the moments when Nalagiri the elephant is charging at us from within. Our habitual response is to fight back with more mental force, more striving, or to give up in despair. The practice of the boundless heart offers a third way. When you feel that familiar knot of frustration tightening in your chest, what if you were to meet it with metta? Instead of berating your mind, you could offer it kindness. May I be patient with my own process. May I be at peace with this feeling of not knowing. When the sharp pain of self-doubt arises, what if you were to meet it with karuna? You could offer compassion to the part of you that is suffering. I feel this pain of confusion. May this suffering be eased. In doing this, the koan transforms. It ceases to be an intellectual puzzle to be solved and becomes an emotional landscape to be healed. The answer you are seeking may not be a concept at all. The answer may be the simple, revolutionary act of being kind to yourself in the face of the unknown. The sound of one hand may not be a sound to be heard by the ears, but a peace to be felt by a heart that has learned to hold its own suffering with unshakable compassion. We have seen how to meet our intellectual and spiritual struggles with the heart. Now, we must learn to apply this same loving alchemy to the most volatile and powerful energies within us. The raw, untamed emotions of anger, fear, and grief. We have opened our hearts to the possibility of metta and karuna, of loving kindness and compassion. We have seen, through the map of interbeing, that we are all connected. This understanding provides a profound sense of peace. But we live in the real world, a world where the heart is not always serene. We are visited by powerful, sometimes overwhelming emotional states. A surge of anger in traffic, a cold wave of fear in the dead of night, a heavy cloak of sadness after a loss. For most of us, our relationship with these difficult emotions is one of conflict. We operate from two basic, unskillful instincts: suppression or unrestrained expression. Suppression is the clenched jaw, the forced smile, the "I'm fine" whispered through gritted teeth. We treat the emotion like an enemy to be shoved into a dark cellar. But the energy does not disappear. It festers, it poisons our inner world, and often emerges later in unhealthy ways, as chronic anxiety, depression, or sudden, inexplicable outbursts. Unrestrained expression is the other extreme. We identify completely with the emotion. We don't just feel anger, we are anger. We become a vessel for its raw energy, lashing out at others, writing scathing emails, replaying grievances in our mind. This spreads the suffering, damaging our relationships, and leaving us feeling drained and regretful. Both of these strategies are rooted in aversion, the desperate push against what is unpleasant, and they only lead to more suffering. The Buddhist path offers a third way. It is not a way of conflict, but a way of alchemy. It is the art of turning straw into gold. In this practice, our difficult emotions are the straw, messy, coarse, and seemingly worthless. But with the right tools, this very straw can be spun into the pure gold of wisdom, compassion, and freedom. Your anger, your fear, your grief are not your enemies. They are not character flaws. They are simply powerful energies, and they are messengers carrying vital information for your healing and awakening. The first step in this alchemy is always mindfulness. Before we can work with an emotion, we must learn to recognize it clearly, without judgment. When anger arises, instead of being swept away, the practice is to take a breath and simply note, anger is here. This is what anger feels like. This simple act of naming creates a crucial space. You are no longer anger. You are the awareness that is noticing the anger. In that space lies freedom. Next, we bring our awareness into the body. Where does this anger live? Is it a fire in your chest, a tightness in your throat, a clenching in your fists and jaw? We explore these physical sensations with a gentle curiosity. This grounds the experience. Anger is a big, scary, abstract concept. Heat in the chest is just a physical sensation. It is manageable. It is workable. Now, with this mindful awareness established, we apply the heart practice of compassion. The Zen master Thich Nhat Hanh offers a beautiful and powerful image for this. Treat your anger like a crying baby. When a baby cries, you do not yell at it to be quiet. You do not lock it in another room. To do so would be cruel. Instead, you instinctively go to the baby. You pick it up gently. You hold it tenderly in your arms. You embrace it. This is precisely how we must learn to treat our own pain. We figuratively pick up our anger. We embrace it with the warmth of our mindfulness. We whisper to it internally, "I see you, my dear anger. I know you are suffering. I am here for you. I will not push you away." We are applying karuna, compassion, to a suffering part of ourselves. We are becoming our own loving parent. We use the steady rhythm of our mindful breathing to rock the crying baby, soothing the raw energy of the emotion with the gentle, calming presence of our breath. Once the emotion is held in this compassionate embrace, once its initial, overwhelming energy has subsided, we can begin to listen to its message. We can ask it, "My dear anger, what are you trying to tell me? What boundary has been crossed? What injustice do you see?" When stripped of its reactive heat, the energy of anger is simply the energy of protection. It often arises to tell us that our values, or the safety of ourselves or others, are being threatened. When we listen, this raw energy can be transformed. It can become the clear, focused power to speak truth with firmness, but without hatred. It can become the courageous fuel for compassionate action to right a wrong. Healthy anger, held in mindfulness, becomes the fierce protector of love. The same is true for fear. Fear is a baby that needs to be held. When we feel its cold grip, we can embrace it with mindfulness and ask, "What are you afraid of?" Sometimes, we find the fear is just a ghost, a story from the past that has no power in the present. At other times, the fear is a wise messenger. It warns us of genuine danger. When we listen to it without panic, fear transforms into prudence, into carefulness, into the wisdom that helps us navigate our lives safely. Fear becomes our wise and cautious advisor. Grief, when held with compassion, becomes a testament to the depth of our love. It is the pain of an open heart, and by allowing ourselves to feel it fully, we honor what we have lost and deepen our connection to all beings who have ever known loss. There is no more powerful story of this emotional alchemy than that of Angulimala. He was a terrifying serial killer, so feared that villages would empty when he was near. His name meant finger necklace, for he wore a gruesome trophy of the fingers of his 999 victims. He was the embodiment of rage, hatred, and delusion. One day, the Buddha calmly began walking down the road toward Angulimala's territory. Angulimala saw him and was astonished. Everyone ran from him, yet this monk was walking calmly towards him. He thought, "I will kill this monk." He began to run, but a strange thing happened. Though the Buddha was only walking at a normal pace, Angulimala, running with all his might, could not catch up to him. Exhausted and confused, he screamed, "Stop, monk, stop." The Buddha, still walking, turned and replied, "I have already stopped, Angulimala. It is you who have not." This statement shattered Angulimala's reality. The Buddha explained, "I have stopped creating suffering for myself and others. You are still running, caught in the endless cycle of violence and pain." In that moment, the Buddha's unwavering compassion and fearless presence acted as the alchemical fire. Angulimala saw the monstrousness of his own suffering. He threw down his weapons, bowed at the Buddha's feet, and asked to become a monk. The straw of his unimaginable rage, when met with the gold of the Buddha's compassion, was itself transformed. Angulimala eventually became an enlightened being, a living testament that no one is beyond redemption, and no emotion is so toxic that it cannot be transformed by the power of a mindful and compassionate heart. The difficulties you face, both inside and out, are your Angulimala. The frustration that arises when you grapple with a koan, like the sound of one hand, is your Angulimala. Your habit is to either run from it in despair or to fight it with a frantic mind. This practice shows you another way. You can stop. You can meet the charging energy of your own confusion with the unwavering, compassionate presence you have cultivated. You can hold that "I don't know" feeling like a crying baby. In doing so, the inner enemy becomes the inner teacher. The very struggle becomes the path. Having learned to turn the straw of our inner world into the gold of wisdom and compassion, we are now equipped to step back into the world. We are ready to take this practice out of the quiet meditation hall and into the chaos and complexity of the marketplace, our workplaces, and our relationships. The true test of this inner alchemy is how it informs the way we live, act, and work in a busy and often challenging modern world. We have journeyed far into the inner landscape, we have learned to sit with the mind, to open the heart, and to hold even our most difficult emotions with a tender, alchemical awareness. A common misunderstanding in the spiritual search is that this inner work is a preparation for an escape, that the goal is to one day retreat to a quiet mountaintop or a silent monastery, leaving the messiness of the world behind. But this is a profound misreading of the path. The monastery is not a building of wood and stone. It is a state of mind. The true practice is not about escaping the world, but about engaging with it fully, with all of our awakened wisdom and compassion. The ultimate goal is to find our peace, not in the absence of chaos, but directly in the heart of it. This is the practice of Zen in the marketplace. There is a famous Zen saying that perfectly encapsulates this principle. Before enlightenment, chop wood, carry water. After enlightenment, chop wood, carry water. The outer activities of life do not necessarily change. You still have to pay bills, answer emails, navigate family dynamics, and wash the dishes. The world does not magically rearrange itself to suit your inner peace. What changes is not the what, but the how. What changes is the quality of presence, the depth of awareness you bring to each simple, ordinary act. Before enlightenment, you chop wood, while worrying about yesterday's argument and planning tomorrow's agenda. Your body is here, but your mind is everywhere else. After enlightenment, you just chop wood. Your mind, your body, and the axe become one unified, flowing action in the present moment. This is the entire practice. Your life, exactly as it is right now, is your meditation hall. Let us begin with the place many of us spend most of our waking hours, our work. Think of your morning commute. For many, it is a daily ritual of stress, a symphony of frustration played on car horns. We can see this as a torment, or we can see it as a practice. As you sit in traffic, can you notice the feeling of your hands on the steering wheel? Can you feel the tension in your shoulders and consciously release it? Can you use a red light, not as a trigger for impatience, but as a bell of mindfulness, a reminder to return to your breath, just for one conscious inhale and exhale? You are not trying to make the traffic disappear. You are trying to find your center within it. Consider your email inbox, that relentless digital stream of demands and information. Our habit is to attack it with a frantic, scattered energy, our mind already jumping to the next message before we've finished the first. The practice of Zen at work is to bring single-pointed awareness to a single task. When you open an email, your entire world becomes that email. You read it with full attention. You compose your reply with clarity. You send it, and then you move to the next. You perform each action as if it were the most important thing in the world, because in that moment, it is. This approach not only cultivates inner peace, it produces better, more effective work. In meetings, instead of being lost in your own agenda or planning what you'll say next, the practice is deep listening. This is the application of compassion. Can you listen with the genuine intention to understand the other person's perspective, even if you disagree with it? Can you notice your own emotional reactions, that flash of anger, that surge of defensiveness, and hold them with the mindful embrace we have practiced, rather than letting them dictate your speech? The conference room becomes a laboratory for self-awareness and compassionate engagement. Then there is the relationship with technology, particularly our phones. These devices are powerful tools, but for many, they have become masters, hijacking our attention and wiring our brains for distraction. The practice is to use them with intention. Before you unlock your phone, take one conscious breath. Ask yourself, what is my purpose? Are you seeking specific information, connecting with a loved one, or are you simply trying to escape a moment of boredom or discomfort? This small pause reclaims your agency. Scrolling through social media becomes a practice of mindful consumption. Are you feeding your mind with content that inspires, connects, and educates, or with junk food that promotes comparison, outrage, and envy? You are the gatekeeper of your own mind. This practice of engaged presence extends deeply into our personal relationships. Perhaps the most profound gift we can offer another human being, a partner, our child, our friend, is our full, undivided attention. This is the art of deep listening. It means putting down the phone, turning away from the television, and offering the totality of your presence. You listen not just to their words, but to the feelings behind the words. You listen without formulating a response, without offering advice, without judging. You simply create a safe, open space for them to be seen and heard. This kind of listening can heal wounds and transform relationships. Flowing from deep listening is loving speech. This is the practice of using our words to heal rather than to harm. Before speaking, especially in moments of conflict, we can pass our intended words through 3 gates. Are they true? Are they kind? Are they necessary? Much of what we say in anger fails at least one, if not all, of these tests. This practice is not about being silent or inauthentic. It is about communicating our truth with a skillfulness that respects the dignity of others and ourselves. Even the most mundane household chores are transformed into profound practices. The Zen master Thich Nhat Hanh often spoke of washing the dishes. We can wash the dishes in a rush, our minds already on the next task, hating every moment. Or we can just wash the dishes. We can feel the warmth of the water on our hands. We can appreciate the smoothness of the ceramic. We can pay full attention to the act of cleaning. He would say that if you cannot be happy while washing the dishes, you will not be happy drinking your tea afterwards. Your peace must be found in the here and now, in the very act of living, not in some future destination. This is how we chop wood and carry water. And so we see how our koan, the sound of one hand, echoes through every moment of our busy lives. The world of the marketplace, the blare of the traffic, the ping of the notifications, the clamor of competing voices in a meeting. This is the sound of 2 hands clapping. It is the world of duality, of action and reaction, of cause and effect, of noise and conflict. The practice of Zen in the marketplace is not about trying to stop this sound. You cannot. It is about learning to hear the silence that underlies it all. The sound of one hand is the calm, centered awareness you bring to the traffic jam. It is the silent, spacious listening you offer to your child. It is the focused, unified presence you bring to the simple act of washing a dish. It is the quiet stillness of your own being, which is never touched by the external chaos. The noise of the world is happening on the surface. The soundless sound of one hand is the deep, abiding peace of your true nature, which is always present, waiting for you to notice it. Every demand, every interruption, every challenge is not an obstacle to your practice. It is the practice itself. It is another opportunity to listen for the sound of one hand. We have journeyed from the initial, confusing question into the heart of our own minds and back out into the world. We have learned to find our center amidst the chaos. Now, with all these tools, with this new integrated understanding, it is time to return to where we began. It is time to face the koan one last time, not with a grasping intellect or a frustrated heart, but with a mind that has been quieted, a heart that has been opened, and a spirit that has found its footing in the real world. It is time to finally hear the koan's silent resolution. We stand now at the end of a long and winding path. We return to the place where we began, to the strange and unsettling question posed by the Zen master Hakuin. Two hands clap, and there is a sound. What is the sound of one hand? When we first heard this question, it may have seemed like a nonsensical riddle, a piece of esoteric wordplay. Our minds, conditioned to solve problems and find answers, immediately went to work. We searched for a clever solution, a hidden meaning, a logical trick, but we found none. Now, we return to the koan, but we are not the same traveler who first set out. We have walked the eightfold path. We have looked into the nature of the thinking mind and the constructed self. We have seen the universal truth of suffering and its cause in our own craving and aversion. We have touched the wisdom of impermanence, emptiness, and the profound reality of interbeing. We have learned to cultivate a boundless heart and to bring our practice into the chaos of the marketplace, armed not with a sharper intellect, but with a quieter mind and a more open heart. We are ready to listen again. The first and most crucial thing to understand is that the koan was never a problem to be solved. It was a tool to be used. Its purpose was not to be answered by the rational mind, but to exhaust the rational mind. It is a wall, intentionally placed in your path. Your intellect tries to climb it, to dig under it, to go around it, and finds that it cannot. The koan is designed to show you the absolute limits of logic and conceptual thought, for it is this very thinking mind, with its endless analysis and division, that separates you from the direct experience of reality. The sound of one hand cannot be figured out, for the same reason you cannot bite your own teeth. The tool is not suited for the task. The koan's function is to help you put the tool down. So, what is it? What is this soundless sound? It is not a physical vibration that can be registered by the eardrums. To search for it in the realm of acoustics is to miss the point entirely. The sound of one hand is reality itself, just as it is, before your mind cuts it into pieces. In every moment, a torrent of pure experience flows into your consciousness, but almost instantaneously, the thinking mind intercepts it, processes it, and labels it. It creates a duality. It sees a bird flying and immediately creates three things. I, the subject, am seeing, the action, and a bird, the object. This process of division is so fast, so automatic, that we mistake this labeled, second-hand version of reality for reality itself. The sound of one hand is the experience of that moment before the division. It is the unified field of pure awareness before the commentary begins. It is not the absence of sound. That is a dead, empty silence. This is a living silence, a vibrant silence, a silence that is pregnant with all possibility. It is the vast, silent, empty sky in which all the clouds of thought, feeling, and sensory experience appear and disappear. The clouds are transient. The sky is ever present and undisturbed. The sound of one hand is the sound of the sky itself. It is the foundational stillness from which all the noise of the two hands of the world, all the conflict, all the action and reaction, all the coming and going is born. How then is it heard? It is not heard with the ears. It is realized with the entirety of your being. It is a profound shift in consciousness. It is the moment when the relentless effort of the seeker finally ceases. As long as there is a you who is trying to hear a sound, you are still operating in the world of two hands, the world of subject and object. The moment of hearing the soundless sound is the moment that sense of a separate self, the seeker, the meditator, the one trying to get it right, dissolves completely, and in that moment of dissolution, you realize the truth of what we have explored. You realize anatta, no self, because the one doing the listening has vanished. You realize shunyata, emptiness, because the sound has no independent existence. You realize interbeing, because the listener, the listening, and the silence have merged into one single seamless whole. It is a moment of pure presence, of unity. You do not hear the sound of one hand, you become it. There is a classic Zen story that illustrates this perfectly. A diligent young monk struggled with this koan for many years. He meditated for hours, he read all the texts, he debated with his peers, but he could not break through. He was filled with frustration and despair. One morning, his master instructed him to sweep the temple gardens. Resigned, the monk took the bamboo broom and began his work. His mind was tired of striving, tired of seeking. He simply swept. His awareness merged with the simple, repetitive motion. The swish of the broom, the feeling of the bamboo in his hands, the sight of the leaves gathering. There was no monk, no garden, no thought of enlightenment. There was only sweeping. In this state of total absorption, a small pebble he swept flicked against a stalk of bamboo, making a sharp click. That simple, unexpected sound in the deep quiet of his absorbed mind shattered the final, subtle barrier of his dualistic thinking. In that instant, everything fell away. He stood, frozen, tears streaming down his face. He had heard it. He went to his Zen master, who took one look at him and knew. The master asked, "Tell me, what is the sound of one hand?" The monk did not offer a single word, a single theory, or a single explanation. He simply stood, present and silent, and bowed deeply. His entire being was the answer. This is the final resolution of the koan. The true answer is the practitioner's own silence, not a dull, empty silence, but a rich, luminous, peaceful silence. It is the silence of a mind that has come home. It is the silence of a heart that has no more questions, because it has found the peace that was the hidden motivation behind all the searching. The desperate need to know has been replaced by the simple, profound peace of being. This is not an experience reserved for monks in ancient Japan. It is your own birthright. It is the deep peace you touch in a moment of total absorption in your work or your art. It is the sense of unity you feel when standing alone in a forest, the boundary between you and the trees dissolving. It is the silent, loving presence you share with another being, where no words are needed. The sound of one hand is the sound of your own true nature, when the noisy chatter of the ego has momentarily ceased. The koan was never a question to be answered. It was a finger pointing, and it was always pointing back at the silent, aware presence that is reading these words right now. The koan has now done its work. The question has dissolved into the silent awareness that was always here. The journey of seeking has ended, right where we stand. And so, all that is left is to take a final look back at the path we have traveled, to gather the jewels of wisdom we have found along the way, and to step forward into our lives, not as seekers, but as finders of the peace that was never lost. Our journey began in noise. It began with the jarring, dissonant sound of two hands clapping, the relentless rhythm of a modern world defined by striving and stress. It was the sound of a mind at war with itself, of a heart divided against the present moment, of a life lived in the frantic space between regretting the past and fearing the future. We felt overwhelmed, fragmented, and we yearned for a quiet place. A silent refuge, we believed, was somewhere far away. And so, we began to walk. We started by bravely diagnosing the fundamental disease of our lives, the pervasive background radiation of anxiety and dissatisfaction that the Buddha called Dukkha. We located its source not in our circumstances, but in the frantic grasping and pushing of our own minds, the insatiable thirst of tanha. But with this diagnosis came hope. We saw the possibility of a profound and lasting peace, the promise of nirvana, the extinguishing of that inner fire. We were given a map for the journey, the Noble Eightfold Path, a practical guide to cultivating the wisdom, ethical harmony, and mental discipline needed to walk our way back home. We learned to see the world as it is, empty of permanence and separation, and to see ourselves as part of a vast, interconnected web of interbeing. We learned that the heart is not a fixed vessel, but a boundless space that can be trained in kindness and compassion. And we discovered the sacred alchemy of turning the straw of our most difficult emotions into the gold of wisdom. This journey, from the clash of two hands to the wholeness of one, leads us to the single most vital message of this path. Peace is not a destination you must struggle to reach. It is not an achievement to be won, an exotic state to be imported from a distant land, or a reward for good behavior. It is your original nature. It is the deep, silent stillness of the ocean that is never disturbed by the waves on the surface. It is the vast, open sky that is never stained by the clouds that pass through it. The sound of one hand was never something to be found, because it was never, ever lost. It is the silence you came from, the silence that underlies all noise, and the silence you can return to in any given moment. And so, this is the final empowerment. You do not need to become a monk or nun. You do not need a monastery on a distant mountain. For your life, exactly as it is the monastery. Your cluttered office is your meditation hall. Your morning commute is your walking meditation. Your most challenging relationship is your most advanced and compassionate teacher. You have everything you need, right here, right now. Your breath is your anchor, the ever-present refuge you can return to in any storm. Every moment of frustration, every surge of anxiety, every pang of grief is a koan, a gateway, an invitation from life to wake up. The long search for peace ends in the very moment you realize it was never absent, only unnoticed. The journey is not about arriving at a new place, but about seeing your own home with new eyes. It concludes when you stop trying to silence the noise of the world and instead learn to listen to the silence within yourself from which it all arises. The sound of one hand is heard when the seeking stops, and the simple, profound, and peaceful act of being begins.